Okay, we were recording. Yesterday, I was a total bonehead, and I was under the impression that I recorded the class, and I found out afterwards that I didn't. So I'm going to redo yesterday's class tomorrow at noon if anybody wants to go and redo the photography class that I did yesterday. But I'm going to redo that entire class tomorrow and have it recorded properly so I can get that out to everybody. But if anybody wanted to do it again or missed it yesterday, then by all means, come and join me tomorrow at noon. Okay, so people are probably just rolling in here. I figure that most people probably have a small grasp on editing. I am going to start from the beginning, though. I'm going to kind of teach, like for me, I've been doing it for a long time, so I've kind of created my own workflow, but so much of the editing process is just being really organized and kind of simplifying things because it's such a monotonous and timely process. I've got lots of the videos that I've put together. You'll watch the first minute of it, and if it's a polished first minute, it's pretty safe to say that I spent the good portion of a day on that. Like some of it takes a really long time. So I'm going to start off probably just going over how I like set up the program, set up a project, and then I just released a video about Spain like 2 days ago. And so I'm going to just reopen up that entire project and kind of go over my timeline and how I did certain things. But that'll be kind of nearing the end of the 2 hours because that'll be getting to more advanced stuff and some of my decision making as to why I chose to cut a certain way or how I achieved a certain effect that should help you guys bring your stuff to the next level. Everybody kind of has like their own style. I can tell when I could see something that Andrew's edited clearly, like opposed to mine. Like there's a pretty distinct difference. Maybe to the untrained eye, you can't really see it, but he has a totally different style than I do. So I'm going to kind of show you what I do. There's certain things that I try to lean away from that I find a lot of people, when they're starting off, are kind of inclined to include in their videos. And you can really see in somebody's project how much video editing they've done because they'll put in, a million visual fade effects between two clips, stuff like that. The audio levels aren't matched and there's popping audio jumps in, like that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go over all of this stuff so you guys have a grasp on making it as kind of smooth and beautiful. And so it doesn't look like that kind of amateur cookie cutter first start. But I'll probably wait maybe another minute or two. Is it kind of a pain if I sent the link to this just a couple minutes before? Because last time I sent the link half an hour before the class started, I had people jumping in half an hour before the class started, and all of a sudden they're looking at me and I'm like still setting stuff up, and so I decided to not do that this time and just blast out the link just before the class. Let's go down the list here. Hey, Austin, what's going on?
What's up, Alex? How are you?
Bro. Yeah, I'm good.
So no Andrew today?
No Andrew today. Andrew's actually in Chicago filming something for Lollapalooza.
Yeah, that's where I live. I sent him a message. I told him he needed to go eat at Portillo's, so I don't know how busy he was, but hopefully you got to try that gem out. It's really good.
I like that you made a priority out of this over Lollapalooza, and Andrew went to Lollapalooza.
Yeah.
That's okay. We're kind of like dividing it up. I've got a pretty, I definitely know my stuff with editing. Probably on the following weekend, I'd probably jump in there with Andrew. He's decided to take on the brunt of the work for the following weekend for teaching those classes, but I think that I'll probably join him and jump in there as well. But I know this was a pretty good gig for Andrew, and I don't think it's necessary for him to be here. I can take this one on my own.
Yeah.
So where are you at with editing again, Austin?
The last time I really edited a video was like years ago, and I was editing on a bootleg copy of Sony Vegas.
Okay.
I don't have any experience with Premiere Pro.
Okay.
I have iMovie, but like you said, I've just not wanted to touch it just because I've heard bad things about it, and I don't want to get like super familiar with it if I'm not going to be using it.
Yeah, don't. No, that's seriously counterproductive. If you teach yourself that, then it's gonna be frustrating to learn Premiere, and there's no way you're gonna like land a job or be really as successful as you can be by using iMovie. Like you're definitely gonna want to just jump right into it. It's sort of like your camera as well. People always say like, well, what's a good beginner camera for me? And a lot of times I say like, if you're gonna do this, if you really like have an interest in doing this, don't get the point and shoot camera. Maybe spend an extra $200 and get a bad DSLR, but at least with the DSLR cameras, it has the functionality for you to learn how the camera works, and then you can make a decision from there whether or not you want to spend $3,000 on a video camera or a camera.
Yeah.
Right?
The most intimidating thing for me right now is sound.
Yeah, audio is tough. Audio is super tough for sure. I've had issues with audio. Our recaps and our videos could use a lot of work. I'd love to have like a boom mic operator and be recording it on like a separate. A lot of people like record on like a separate device, and then you splice the two of them together. That's why you get like that clap, like with the clacker at the beginning of movies, because that's an indicator for the audio guy to match it with the video. But I'm always, because we're doing run and gun, so I'm just shooting with the VideoMic Pro on top of my camera, and I really need to be aware of like my camera settings when recording the audio, and then how far I am from my subject, whether or not there's wind. A lot of time there's like a bubbling brook in the background, and so when you're cutting to audio of somebody talking and there's, say, a waterfall in the background, it's just obnoxious to listen to. So there's so many things to factor in.
Yeah.
But audio is an entirely like separate beast. We could almost teach like a class on audio editing and a class on video editing. I'm going to be kind of squeezing the two of them into this class here, though. But, okay, how are we looking here? We got 13 participants, 12:05. I might just jump into it here. You guys ready to rock? What else we got here? Let's go down the list here. Ruby, yeah, Ruby. You're unmuted. How are you, Ruby?
Hey, good. I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. How are you for video editing? Like, what's your level of editing at?
I have edited some videos on iMovie before.
Okay.
But like nothing. I never taken a class or anything. So.
Okay. That's good, because I'm going to be starting from the basics, from the beginning, and kind of give you a breakdown as to like how, like whenever I start editing a new country, because right now like, each one of my projects are broken up into countries. So I have a kind of a routine that I just do to start off with, and that's going through Premiere. But I'm going to be teaching Premiere here,
Okay.
and it's not really something to be intimidated by, guys. I had a gentleman when I was like 16 years old to teach me. He was like a mentor for me to some degree, and he put Premiere on my computer, and he gave me like maybe a 1 hour breakdown as to how it works. And it's really like the second you understand how the timeline works and just what you're visually looking at, then the rest of it kind of falls into place. And it's really not something to be intimidated by. It's pretty nerdy, but it's incredibly fun. Like it's a weird combination of math and art, but it is very artistic. I would almost say that the editing process of a video is maybe the most creative part of producing a video, because you can just create anything that you want. Oh, that was Edward coming in. Edward's waking up. Oh. That's all good. How you doing there, Edward?
Well, I just woke up. It's really kind of tough a little bit to go with the classes, but yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. I appreciate you making the effort to wake up at this time.
Yeah.
I wonder if I found like a common hour for everybody else, maybe I could do the classes at like 3 a.m. my time or something. I don't know. It's just on the other side of the world. Yeah. 3 a.m. I might be a bit asleep teaching a class though, so this is probably a better time for me. Okay, I'm going to start getting into it. Okay, so video editing, exciting stuff. Move this guy. Okay, so starting a project. Okay, so when I'm starting a project, the first thing I do is I go to my desktop and I'll create a folder. So let's say this photo's from Spain. So that's from inside the Sagrada Familia. So do a new folder and I'll just name the project. So we're gonna name this one content creator series project, something like that. Okay, something like that, okay? Ignore my typos. Okay, so what happens when you create when you're creating a project, the first thing you want to do, I think, is you want to consolidate everything for that project into one folder. Because if you have it all over the place, it's going to be hard for you later on to like reapproach that project. Right now, because I'm like, I have a folder for every single country that we're cutting together, and every little component or element that I use to edit that video together is saved in that folder, so that when, let's say, hypothetically speaking, our 5-year trip is finished, we've actually successfully traveled every country in the world, and then I want to take everything that we've filmed and make it into a documentary on a larger level. I've already done a ton of this work, so I have these folders saved, so I can just go and reapproach the project later on. And it's just good for like organization. So much of this stuff is just keeping yourself organized, guys. So I'm gonna go new project. So let's name it content creator series training, something like that. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to browse here. It says location. So it'll probably have like some default location where it's going to save your project files. But I think it's better if you just, like I said, create that folder at the beginning. And then find the folder you created, which is right here. Choose that. And then make it so that all of your save points are going to go into that folder, just so you know where it is and it's consolidated. But it's super important to keep yourself organized with this, guys. Okay. So we're going to go, okay. It's going to open up. And then, okay, so this is the way the screen looks at first. I kind of customize it to the way that I like to edit, but you're going to need to immediately kind of start adjusting some of the stuff in your preferences. So appearance, you can adjust the brightness to it. Sometimes if it's really dark, maybe it'll be harder for you to stay awake. Maybe it's easier for you if you brighten it up to have it like blasting in your face. I keep it dark just for my own preference, but you can just adjust that however you want. Okay, so audio, like a lot of this stuff is like audio hardware. This would be like if you have a microphone set up to your computer, you can plug it in and then adjust where find the microphone so your Adobe program can read your mic. Sometimes if you're doing like a narration, you can actually record it in the moment on your project and have a microphone set up. So you just click a button, record some audio, it'll save as a file in your project, and then you can just layer that onto your audio. So you can find their hardware options in there. Okay, so right here where it says memory at the bottom here, it'll give you an option for how much RAM you want to use when you're working on a video. It's better to use as much RAM, I think, when you're cutting a video, especially if you're using high quality footage. If you're shooting 4K or 1080p, I mean, I don't ever go lower than 1080p, and I presume if you guys want to produce like beautiful video, you're going to be shooting at least 1080p. Don't don't go lower than that, because it starts becoming quite noticeable. I mean, if it's only going on YouTube, then you can kind of get away with it, but for the most part, you know, you're going to want to have it as high quality as you possibly can. So you're going to want to create a project that's at least 1080p. I'm going to be shooting this entire next trip in 4K, so we're going to take it to the next level. I haven't shot in 4K up to this point, just due to the fact that I didn't feel that the world was quite ready for it yet. But I think that now technology's gone to the point where people have the right monitors, people have the right processor speed or like internet speed to be able to actually stream something in 4K, in which case it deserves to be shot in 4K. It also is like something about, you know, like the amount of space that you're taking up. I shot 6 terabytes worth of footage on our last trip at 1080p. And if we'd shot that at 4K, it would have been like 30 terabytes, which is just an obnoxious amount of space. So, so we haven't shot in 4K yet, but we will be. But right here, yeah, on the memories, it gives you an option. So I have installed RAM. I've got 16 gigabytes of RAM on my computer and RAM reserved for other applications. It won't let me go lower than 3. So I'm choosing to allot 3 gigabytes of RAM for me to be running, say, you know, the software that I'm using to record this class with you guys, or it could be for, you know, whatever other program, iTunes, something like that running in the background. But give yourself a lot of RAM. Media cache. So this here is something when you're with using Adobe, it saves small little renders that it does over the course of you making a project in a folder, like a cache folder, and that folder is usually really hard to find. And sometimes I'll look at I now know where it is, but when I first got this Mac, I'd look at my storage space, and I'd used up all of it, but I had deleted all my projects, so I didn't know where it had gone. But it is because Adobe just kept on saving thousands of little rendered files into my cache folder. So if you want, you can actually like change that location so it's somewhere exactly where you know. And then when you're finished doing a project, now like whenever I finish doing a project, I immediately go to my cache folder and I just delete all of that. And it usually opens up like 9 to 10 gigabytes of room, depending on how big the project is. It could be bigger, but definitely when you're like, if you import footage into Adobe, the first thing it does is it'll start creating little peak files for your audio. And that's so that it can like stream your audio faster. A lot of what the program does is it makes a smoother process for you to edit by creating little renders of your audio and your video so that you can play back seamlessly, as opposed to like playing back and it all of a sudden having kind of a lag and a jerkiness to it. And a lot of that stuff's going to be saved here in your cache. So that's something you might want to go and look into changing. Okay, so I'm going to cancel that. Okay, so if we're going to look at these screens here, on the far left here, where it says import media to start, this is going to be a list of all of the files. That's where all of the files that you're using in your edit are going to be stored. So all of your different folders of video. The way that I've organized my hard drives is that I have like a country name, and then inside the country name, I have the city that we traveled to. Then inside the city that we traveled to, I have the day that we filmed. And then inside the day that we filmed, I have photo or video. And then inside video, I have my main camera and then a breakdown of the other cameras for the most part. So it's like, there's a bunch of different layers of organization going on there. I can import just the entire country's name, and it should, in theory, import it exactly the way that I had saved it. So it would say the country, then I'd open that, and all of the stuff that I had done beforehand should open up pretty seamlessly into this media start window, this little project file window. The next one here is the source clip. This window here, that's where you're going to be reviewing your videos. Here, I'm going to actually open recent project. I created one just so that we didn't have to go through some of the timely process of importing all the stuff. Oh. I'm just going to reopen this. So what I'd done before this class started is I started up a project, and what happens is when you import all of your content, it'll go through like a bit of a process to create those audio peak files that I just mentioned to you. And so sometimes importing your video, if it's a huge file, then it could take up to an hour for it to actually get ready to be edited. So I just did that already beforehand, so we don't have to worry about that. So normally when you open it up, this over here on the left-hand side, top left, this will be empty of these little bins here. So what I do right off the bat is I start creating these bins. You can right-click and just say new bin, and then you can just give it a name. You can just call it sound effects, something like that. But this is going to be the best way for you to keep yourself organized, and it's really important to do it right off the bat, because you're going to be importing tons of stuff into your project. from all different sources. So sound effects folder. I've got audio. Usually I put the sound effects and the audio typically in the same folder, but that would be, say, if I want to import some music, then I put the music in the audio folder. This one where it says other material, that could be anything. You know, I could be video from, say, a different project. Maybe I wanted to cut to a moment that happened a year earlier when we met somebody and bring reference to it, something like that. So if I'm importing any other content that wasn't actually necessarily a part of that country's folder, then I'd put it into like other material. But all of this stuff is totally customizable. This is just the way that I do it. So every editor is going to have their own difference, like naming their boxes, the different workflow. This is just the way that I do it. Video, if you open that up. So this is like, these are days worth of video. I've just imported 1 day, so it wasn't like an overwhelming amount of stuff to go through. But here I have, in that video, I've got a breakdown of the cameras that I used. So this bottom one, okay, so that one's like our main video camera. So this would be the footage from our A7S. Here's stuff that Mike shot with the drone. Mike's the drone pilot, so whenever you see an awesome drone shot, that's Mike's work for the most part. 5D, we use a Canon 5D as a secondary camera. This is all photographs because it's a JPEG file, so I probably won't be using any of that unless it was, say, like a time lapse. I use our Canon 5D Mark II to shoot time lapses. I hook up a thing called an intervalometer to it, and that controls like shooting a single frame every second for an hour or something. And those will come up as JPEGs, in which case you'd want to save those because you'll render out your time lapse on the timeline down here. Okay. So the next window over here is, I'm just going to bring up a clip. So this is just it kind of reviews the clip that you're working with. And a lot of people will use this for going through your footage at the bottom. So you can scroll on this little timeline with this little line right here. You can scroll through the length of the clip. And at the end right over here, it shows you how long it actually is. It's a 14-second clip. So you can cruise through it. I don't use a lot of these tools that are down at the bottom here. The only ones that I really use are like the mark in and mark out. And if you look at some of these tools here, I use the marker button on occasion, but mark in and mark out. So that would be, if you're looking through your clip and you're trying to find kind of the golden moment, and you say, okay, it's going to be when this water all of a sudden gets away from Andrew wakeboarding. So like starting it there, and it goes to that moment right there. Let's just say hypothetically that was the sweetest moment of that clip. You can actually just put a mark in and a mark out point, and now when you bring this clip into your timeline, it's not going to bring all of this unnecessary footage before and after, which I would call like the tail and the head of the clip. Almost every shot that I shoot is going to have a tail and a head. They rarely have a point to it, or they rarely have like a clip in its entirety that's usable. It's usually like just a small portion of it, or multiple different parts of the clip that are actually usable. So this is how you're gonna kind of find the sweet part of your clip. But I'm gonna show you a faster, more efficient way to do this. This is where the way that I think a lot of editors would do it, would be doing it in this window, but I tend to actually use this window for other things. If you look at the top of this window there, you're gonna see that it has a bunch of different options for like different information. So effects control. I'm gonna get into that in a little bit, but I primarily would use this window for effects control. And so later on when I get some stuff onto my timeline, I'm gonna show you exactly why. But I'm just trying to orient you right now with why these things are up here. Audio mixer, this could be for you to help you mix your audio to get proper audio settings. I typically don't use this very much either. Mostly I'm just using this as a visual reference to the clip and for effects control. If we go back over to the left here into this folder here, you're going to see a bunch of information. On the bottom you can scroll over, and there's lots of stuff going on here. It's showing you your audio info, how it was recorded, 48 hertz audio. My video info, this is going to be an indicator as to the resolution that I used. So right here, if I go to my drone footage, typically we shot the drone. Yeah, so it's a much bigger file. So we shot all of our drone footage at 4K, all of it, which was great because it really helps later on if I want to recrop shots and do some stuff with it. But or just a higher resolution. It's a beautiful video. But the majority of our stuff that I filmed was at 1080p, which is this resolution level right here. So there's a lot more information going on here. If you click on these buttons at the top, like where it says Media Start, right here, this is going to help you organize your stuff. Like if I click on, say, name, it'll organize all my clips by the name right here in alphabetical order or numerical order. If you want to go by frame rate, you can click that and it'll organize all the clips that have a different frame rate. And if you want to click on Media Start, I typically do Media Start because I edit my projects chronologically the way that I filmed it. So my camera actually recorded in the moment, almost like a time code. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, I was shooting like right here where it says C0786. Say my shot was actually C09 or C999. It doesn't go past that. The next clip that I would shoot would go to C001 or 0001. And so if I organize this by name, even though maybe the two clips were shot right after each other, it would break that up. And so the 001 will be at the first, and the 99999 will be at the bottom. But in all reality, it was just on the day I had my clip count go overlap, go over the maximum count and go back to 1. So that's why I would probably use Media Start to organize myself. You can also go in here, and if you see clips that you like and you want to have a good reference point, you can just rename them. I think a lot of people probably do that, but that's kind of depending on the project you're working on. We're doing such a run and gun project that I'm like, this is just 1 day's worth of filming. That's not even half of it. I've got more here, like 5D and like all of this stuff. This is like an entire day's worth of filming. There's a lot of clips going on here, and that's only just from one camera. So it would be an exhausting project for me to actually go in and name all of these clips specifically. So I just kind of go chronologically. 787 is going to be what I filmed directly before 788, before 789, like all that kind of stuff. Okay, so on the right next to it is going to be the frame rate. Now this is pretty important. So it says 23.97. In your camera, when you're going through and choosing your settings for when you're filming, you're going to have two options. You're going to have a bunch of different options, but the main options that you're going to be looking at are either 24 frames or 30 frames per second. And so this is going to come down to you as a videographer to choose what frame rate you want to go with. On our videography class, I went over why you would choose a certain one. With 24 frames per second, it has a little subtle jumpiness to the shot. It's not perfectly smooth, like 30 frames per second. And so that's a stylistic way to shoot. That's what they'd use for movies and for cinematic, like if you want a cinematic feel, you shoot at 24 frames per second. So our first 2 seasons that we shot, I shot at 30 frames per second. And this year we shot at 24 frames per second. That was all just personal choice. I wanted to make it a little bit more cinematic looking this year, so I switched that up. So when you're creating your sequence, which is what is down here, like this at the bottom, the timeline, this is kind of my sequence. I make a folder for sequences. And let's say like the last video that I did, Spain, we went to Granada, we went to Barcelona, and we went to Ibiza. And so I made a sequence for each one of those cities, and I just kind of attacked them in chunks. If you right click in this box here and go to new item and sequence, it's going to bring up, this is kind of like what's going to be the indicator for your, this is where you're going to choose the right sequence for your project. And that's going to be primarily based on your choice of frame rate and on the camera that you use to film it. So AVCHD, that's typically what you would use for like, if you film with a DSLR camera. That's what I use with my camera. If you're shooting with a Canon 7D, 5D, any of those cameras, it's typically going to be in the AVCHD But you know, if you're starting a project and you're not entirely sure, I would suggest just going online and looking it up and finding out which one works for you. If you're shooting a really high end project, down here you have red. So these are sequences that are set up specifically for this type of camera. Even lower, I used to shoot with a camera called an HD X1. So that would be these settings down here. I'd use this, but now I'm just shooting with these DSLR cameras. So inside you have a couple different options for your resolution: 1080i, 1080p, 1080p's 1080 progressive. That's going to be your highest quality project. So I always go 1080p. And then inside you can choose your frame rate, 24 frames, 50 frames, 60 frames. These, I don't think you would typically use like a 50 or 60 frame project file. I'm sure that some people maybe would do it, and it's gonna create a really smooth look to your video, but it's not really terribly appealing. It doesn't look unrealistic. For me, it just looks terrible. It looks really amateur. But 24 frames is what we shot our entire year on. So my sequence is always going to be a 24 frame sequence. Okay. So you can just name that sequence. Call it Switzerland. Swiss wakeboarding. Something like that. And then I would usually take that one, I put that into my sequence folder. If I open this, now I have two sequences that I've created. Both are probably ending up going to be part of the same project, but if I'm wanting to edit different parts of my video separately, then I can use this to help organize myself. For me, because I'm shooting multiple cities in a country, I typically will create one of these sequences for the city that I was in that country. So, okay. Now, when you import your footage, sorry guys, trying to find a size that works here. Okay, so if I go into my video, I'm going to show you how the timeline works here. I'm going to go organize this the way that I've shot it. So media start. So this is going backwards, so okay. So I would typically grab the entire day worth of footage and then drag and drop it into the timeline down here. Okay. Also, guys, the layout of your project is totally customizable. The main windows that you're going to be using are this one on the left, this one on the right. The way that I have it set up is kind of the way that I use it mostly. I keep a folder of effects down in the bottom left. I keep this little bar right here. These are all just specific tools that are used for doing different types of edits and cuts. Up in the top left will be my project window, which is going to have all of my organized files that I'm using to make my video. The one next to it is the viewer that we'll be using for effects controls as well. I'm going to show you how I cut down my footage faster than using this window in a second. And then the one on the right is going to be, that's going to be your actual project. So when you're going through and doing your edits, all of the cuts and the way that actually is like the final look is going to be presented up in the top right-hand corner here. And then, okay. And then on the bottom here, this is your timeline. And the timeline is kind of where all the magic happens. So the thing with the timeline is that it's just, when you're looking at it at first, it looks a bit foreign. I know it's kind of difficult to understand and wrap your mind around how it works, but it's all just layering. So if you can see, I'm going to make this bigger. I have V3, V2, V1, A1, A2, A3, A4. So these are my varying video and audio channels. Okay. Typically, you don't go too much more than V3. Some projects I have will have like 9 video levels, but you can customize this. If you right click in this area right here, you can add tracks. And then there's a number here, it says 1 track, let's say 3 I want to add 3 video tracks, and I don't want to add any more audio tracks, so 0 audio tracks. And then I say okay, and then boom, now I have 6 layers of video. So when you're playing, when you're organizing your footage here, let's say you have dialogue in your video, I would tend to put like the clips where people are talking on the bottom, because if you put a layer of video above the bottom layer of video, then that's gonna, the layer of video that's on the top is gonna be the layer that ends up being visual in the shot, or like in the final product. So right here I have this shot of this waterfall, and then because I put a layer of video over top of it, it's gonna cut to that layer of video. I'm just scrolling through this shot. So now it's a layer of a visual of a train. And then when you get to the end of that clip, it's gonna go back to what's on the top. And because there's nothing above this clip right here, then that's gonna be what's visual. So this is how you're gonna kind of layer stuff over top of things. That's good for you, like for our videos, when we cut to dialogue of us talking, I'll put that on the bottom here. And then I just put visuals over top. So all of a sudden I'm saying, you know, like, hey, we went swimming with whale sharks and Mike got hit in the face with a fin or something like that. And then I'll cut to a visual that I have of that moment happening, but I can still keep the audio and everything going underneath of it. But the visual will change because I put a visual clip over top of it. So you're gonna wanna kind of start looking at your timeline as separate layers of video and audio, and understand that at least with the video, the one that's on the top is going to be the one that's visually apparent. Now there are ways, if you want to go into like your effects control, where you can choose to put like an opacity onto the layer on top. And so right now there's like, it's let's see, effects control. So my opacity is 100%. So that means you can't see through that clip at all. But if I was to adjust my opacity, then all of a sudden I can show like half of that clip, and it'll show the clip below it as well. So you can kind of layer, I don't know, this might be an effective effect. That's like somehow, I don't know. There could be lots of ways to do this. You want to like fade from a moon into a sun or something like that, whatever. But that's going to show you that you can still have a visual of both clips if you affect your opacity. But that's kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to the timeline. Okay, so now below it, you have audio. The thing with audio is that every layer of audio is going to be pretty apparent. Whereas opposed to video, if I put a video clip over top of a video clip, if there's no opacity effect on it, then you're only going to see that video clip. Or if I put an audio channel or audio layer below another audio layer, both of them you're gonna hear both of those going on. So you're probably gonna use more layers of audio putting together a project than layers of video. My videos typically max 3 layers of video, whereas I'll probably sometimes go 5, 6 layers deep of audio if I really wanna have like a dynamic, deep project going where, you know, you've got all the sounds of the jungle and you've got music and you have somebody talking. A lot of times, like people that do proper audio design, they'll have really extensive folders of sound effects, and each clip has been recorded very intentionally to be like a singled out clip. Like it'll be a singled out clip of a bird chirping, and then a singled out clip of a car driving, and those will be layered. So it sounds like it was recorded at the same time in the moment, but when they're doing a mastering of the audio, they want to be able to manipulate the volume levels of both of those, of all of the levels of audio. Okay, so on the left here, once again, you have the ability to start like moving this up and down. There's going to be reasons for this, mostly with audio. You can kind of make your layer larger. And the reason being is because like there's lots of reasons, but the main one I'd say is, okay, if you're going to add a keyframe here, the keyframe is going to be an indicator on this line here of your volume level. So if I add another keyframe, it's going to add these little dots, and now I can raise and lower my audio level on my audio channel. This is going to be highly used when you're creating a video to get the layering properly done on your video. So if you want to have a duck of audio, like a song duck, so that all of a sudden somebody's voice comes in and they're talking over top of the song, but the song isn't overwhelming and overbearing on the person's audio, well, then you would want to lower that audio level down. And then when you do a playback of it, you're going to have a noticeable dip in the audio, and you're going to have a more balanced final product there where you can actually pull out somebody's dialogue and not have the song overwhelming or like overbearing. So definitely the audio channels, that's going to be customizable by using these keyframes. The keyframes are on the left. Now, if you don't make the layer here bigger, then it's not going to give you the keyframe option. You have to actually lower it down, and then it's going to give you the option here for a keyframe. So if I add another keyframe and then lower that one down as well. So what would happen now is here it's lower. You can see this line, this is flat, so it's going to be very consistently at this low level. And then as it goes along the timeline here, you're going to see this line raise up, and that's an indication that my audio level is actually going to raise up to this point right here. I could go higher than that, I could go lower than that, but it's going to be kind of up to your ear and up to using some other methods of seeing if your audio is peaking and if it's going too high. But that's how you're going to choose and control your audio levels. Right next to it, where the keyframe button is, there's this button, which is this arrow, which will help you like jump back and forth from keyframes. A lot of the times what I do also is if I have an audio duck, if I have like a consistent audio level that I'm using in a song for when I have dialogue, I'll just copy. You can just copy two of these. Like if you click on one of these, then hold shift and copy, or click on the next one, it'll select two of them. And then you can just do sort of like with text on a computer, you can just do like Control C and then Control V, and it'll actually copy and paste your keyframes. So you can just kind of redo a previous edit faster. And I use that quite often. Okay. How's everybody doing? Is it okay? I know the timeline's kind of hard to look at. If you use the minus and plus key, you can zoom in and out of your project. So if I zoom right out, this is every single clip that I've brought into my project file, into my timeline. That's all of them right here. You can scrub through them. And when you scrub through them, the visual of it is going to pop up on that viewfinder, or that viewing window on the top right. Like that. Like it just pops in. If this video layer right here, if you bring that up, it's going to actually show you a visual reference point on the video level, or on the video layer. The only problem that I have with this is that when you choose to have this pop in, it actually causes quite a bit of a lag, because as you zoom in and out, it's going to be constantly trying to like bring in a visual reference point, and it causes kind of a lagginess to the program. So I always keep my video levels pretty small, just so that that doesn't pop up, and it really will speed up your workflow. Now, once again, like I said before, you could cut all your footage up in this window up here on the left by using your mark in and out points. A lot of these little tools will disappear if you make these windows smaller. So to get those tools in that window, you're going to have to lengthen it out, and then they'll pop up right here. So you can mark in. Let's just delete this one for a second. Let's go. Okay, so we'll just use just a random clip here. Okay, so you can mark in, find the part that you like. Okay, maybe it was that carve there, and then mark out. So now the only part that I would be bringing down to my timeline, if I'm using this window here, would be what I've marked in between my in and out point. If you scroll over some of these little buttons here, these tools, you're gonna have, it says like the letter I next to it. It says mark in, and then there's the letter I, so the I is indicating for mark in, and then the O is for marking out. So these are hotkeys. You want to familiarize yourself with hotkeys as soon as you possibly can, because it's really going to speed you up. Because then all of a sudden, like you just typing the key on the keyboard will be instead the faster method as opposed to you finding it with your mouse, clicking in, moving out, clicking out. Instead, you can just go with I and O. I can just go here, hit I, go here, hit O, and that would be like a faster method for you to move around and get your shot, getting your shot, cutting it down. Now, just above that, you have a clip, or it says drag video only, and you have drag audio only. Those, once again, will disappear if you make this window too small. But if you only want to bring the video from a clip, you can grab the video only. You have to, the hand will pop up. You can see this little hand icon. So you can grab that and you can bring it down, and that'll come down to your timeline. Now my timeline is super zoomed out, so you can't really even see it. But if I punch back in by using the plus and minus key, it'll show you that clip. So it just gives you an indication as to how zoomed out you can be. Up here, there's a number indicator that shows you how long, like it says 00.55. That means like right now my timeline is 55 minutes long. But that clip that I just brought down into the timeline is like 5 seconds long. So it's hard for you to see it when you're fully zoomed out because it's so small in comparison to some of these other clips that might be like 30 seconds long or a minute long. So you have to punch in to be able to see it. Okay, so here there's no audio below it because I clicked on that icon right there, in which case I only brought in the video. If I clicked on the one next to it, it says only drag in the audio. So I can just drag in the audio here. Most of the time, I would say you're gonna wanna go over the screen itself, click on that, and then drag that down. And that's gonna drag down both your audio and your video. But that's if you wanna choose, if you choose to be cutting your footage down in this screen. I don't do that. I found a workflow that works way better. It's much, much faster. So I'm gonna show you how to do that instead because it's gonna speed you up dramatically. The other thing I wanna show you guys is, okay, above your video and audio levels right here, there's a bunch of buttons. There's these lock buttons here. If I click that lock button, that means that that whole layer of video is gonna be locked down. I can't adjust it at all. If that lock button's there, I can't manipulate it, move it, I can't do anything. So the same thing with audio. If I click that audio channel, now it's locked in and I can't move it at all. I almost never do that. I usually have an option for me to manipulate it and move it around. You can choose also to select just specific audio or video levels. Let's say you choose video 4 and you choose, one second, audio 2. Now if I bring this in, see these two are selected here, video 4 and audio 2. If I bring the clip in now, it's gonna lock it in. Oh, 1 second. Oh. Oh, why is it not doing it? That's really weird. Oh, it didn't do it for some reason. Normally it would only bring the audio or bring the audio and the video to the layer that you selected. I'm not entirely sure why it didn't do that though. Oh, 1 second, let's try something. Huh. Well, it didn't work. Anyways, it's not terribly important. You don't use that very often, but that's a good way for you to just single out a single clip. Oh, 1 second, we got some chat. Camera today, what happens when your sequence is higher than what you shot? What happens when your sequence is higher than what you shot? Sorry, Austin, are you asking like when the sequence resolution is higher than what you shot it at? Yeah? Here, let's see, just 1 second, I'm gonna unmute you. Austin, were you asking when the sequence resolution is higher?
So you shot those clips at 24 frames per second, and there were options for like a higher frame rate too.
Right.
So what would happen if you shot at 24 and selected say 30?
Right. So I'm gonna get into that. So if you shot at 24 and then selected 30, that's gonna, you probably don't want to go that route. Like it might actually end up stretched, like having a different audio, like your audio would be pretty noticeably different because it would probably, like if you were to go the opposite direction, let's say if I shot 60 frames a second and then I brought it into a 30 frame per second project, I shot twice as many frames in that 1 second as my project file, as my sequence, and in which case it will play out twice as long. But the only way you can get to do that, I'm gonna get into that. So this is how you obtain really smooth, good looking slow motion is by manipulating that. But I would definitely be pretty diligent about choosing the cameras on your camera setting, the frame rate that you're planning to edit the project in. So if you shot at 30 frames, well, then I would edit the project at 30 frames. If you shot at 24, edit the project at 24. I'm sure that you could maybe go like shoot at 30 frames and then bring it into a 24 frame project, and maybe it'll just like cut out frames here and there, and you might be able to get the same effect. But I haven't really tried it out the opposite direction, but you're probably going to get a weird effect happening there. So I would just shoot the way that you're intending to edit it. If that makes sense.
Okay. Cool.
So the other thing is also what I wanted to get into is the resolution though as well. Like, so over here with this project setting, so with my sequence, let's go drone. Because the drone footage I shot, and just one second, sequence. The drone footage we shot at 4K. So drone. So if I create a 1080p sequence, and then I bring in my 4K drone footage, like this, drag that in, it's gonna have this window pop up where it says this clip does not match the sequence settings, change sequence to match the clip settings. So then you have the option, let's say you just accidentally clicked on the wrong resolution level and you clicked it so it's 1080p, but you actually shot everything at 4K and you wanna export the video at 4K, well then you could say change sequence settings. But what I'm doing is I'm exporting everything at 1080p, but I'm shooting things in 4K. And the reason why I'm doing that, so if I go keep existing settings, so what happens now is that when I go over my footage that was shot at 4K, it pops up here. So this is a shot that was filmed in 4K. If you look at the original, because it's a 4K shot, which is, you can like zoom, like it's a really high resolution shot, and now I'm bringing it into a project with a smaller resolution. On this project, it's gonna look really zoomed in. So in the effects control, I can scale my clip back 50%. And now I'm gonna get how the shot was intended to be filmed in the first place. That's the full intended frame of the shot that was shot in the drone. And the really cool thing about this is that now I have the option with 4K to punch right in on my shot. So I can go say 150% and then move that around. And now I can actually zoom in without losing much resolution whatsoever on a part of my image. So you can shoot a really wide shot intentionally in 4K, bring it into a 1080p project, and then choose specific parts of your image that you want to punch in on, which is really great if you want to do a reframing, say your composition was off, or if you want to mimic a dolly, say you shot really wide, you could punch in and then you can animate a motion horizontally on that clip to mimic as if you'd done a dolly on the day. Like you can mimic camera movements. But that's going to be something that comes in if you bring in a higher resolution into a lower resolution sequence, like a higher resolution shot into a lower resolution sequence. The other thing with what we were going over before with the frame rates. So what I do now is I shoot everything almost, like next year I'm going to shoot everything at least 60 frames a second. In the camera it'll say 60 frames a second, but when it comes up on your program it's going to say 59.94. Or in the camera, it's going to say 24 frames per second. But in all reality, it's actually 23.976 frames per second. So with these clips that are 59 frames per second, if I bring it into my 24 frames per second timeline, it'll actually play back at 24 frames per second. But because I know that I shot it at twice the amount of frames, I can, sorry, one second. I can change the frame rate by 50%, and then you'll get that really smooth slow motion. If you were to try to do that at a shot that you shot at 24 frames per second and then make it go slow motion, it's going to be really jumpy. The way you get smooth slow motion is by shooting at a higher frame rate then bring it into a project that's set up for like a 24 frames per second sequence. And then you can slow it down because you shot on the day, you shot twice as many frames in that second. So you have more room to play with. So like if I go speed, it'll give me a percentage indicator for my speed. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, I feel like, because a lot of you guys haven't even looked at this program before. But that essentially is twice as long as I originally filmed it. And it's going to give me super smooth slow motion, as you can see up in the right-hand side. And it looks, you know, it's beautiful slow motion. You can even do 120 frames per second and then slow that down and to be even twice as slow as that. And you can shoot with the really good high-end cameras now. You can shoot 1080p, 120 frames per second, beautiful high definition video, and slow it right down, which is great if you're capturing, like, you know, you got like a hummingbird drinking nectar out of a feeder or something like that. You can slow it down and really get their wings in beautiful slow motion. So I think when you're going out and shooting, and we kind of went over this in our videography class, you really want to be shooting at a higher frame rate, because in post-production, it's going to give you that option. You don't have to go slow motion, but at least you have the option. If I shot the whole thing at 24 frames per second, then that's unusable slow motion. It's really, really jerky, and you know, you still kind of get the effect, but it looks amateur and shitty. So you want to shoot it at a higher frame rate. So do you add the millisecond option on the timeline? I only have minutes and seconds. Let's see. You know, what happens is it goes down to, like, when you zoom in on your, sorry, 1 second. When you zoom in on your timeline, if you zoom all the way in, each one of these is a single frame. So you can see in the clip, as I'm scrolling through this, that's an indicator for every single frame that I shot. So because I shot at, or the project is 24 frames per second, so if we go to, say, let's go to like 3 minutes here. So you can see top left here, it says 3 minutes, or in the left of the timeline here, it says 3 minutes and 1 frame. That's 1 frame. This is 3 minutes of footage if you played it back, if you played it in a row. But this is an indicator for 1 frame. So if you go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, if you go to 24, it's going to jump to the next second, because 24 frames per second. So 23, 24, now it's 1 second later. So if I had made this project a 30 frames per second project, then that would have gone up all the way to 30, 29, and then when I hit 30, then it would have jumped to indicate that it's 1 second worth of footage. So I'm not doing milliseconds, it's only going down to minutes and seconds here. But it's important for you to kind of start wrapping your mind around visually how the timeline looks. So it's going to be just different layers of audio and video layered. And then as you scroll through it and zoom in and out, also this little blue line right here, that's kind of your zoom in point. When I'm zooming in and out, if I want to zoom in on something, I'll grab that, I'll move it to where I want to zoom in, and then I'll zoom in and punch right in. And then if I zoom out, like this is zooming all the way out, that's that clip all the way zoomed out, punch all the way in. Now these are every individual frame. And when I'm editing, I do go down to the frames, but you get good at it. Like a lot of it starts becoming just second nature, just seeing when something should be cut. But we'll get into some more advanced stuff in a little bit. I just want you guys to kind of get up to speed with how the timeline works. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so importing your footage. Yeah, we did that. Beautiful. Okay, starting project, choose your settings. Yeah, so choosing the settings, that would be essentially choosing like your camera option when you're opening up your project. Getting yourself organized, that's like creating your bins and everything, importing your footage. Okay, we went over the windows. Doing your frames, resize the layers. Okay, so organizing the layers. Now this is, once again, this is really important for you to know depending on the project you're working on, like if you're working on a music video, then for the most part, you probably wouldn't be manipulating the audio to any degree. You're probably just going to be using the audio from the recorded song, in which case you can just smack that audio, that song down on the timeline. I have the song in here. So here's my song. So you can just drag and drop that down into the timeline. So if it's a music video, you could probably just put it on the top layer of audio right here. But for me, I usually put the song on the bottom because then it's easier for me to move the audio for my video clips around on the next 2 layers. So I give myself at least 2 layers for my individual video clips, and I use the 3rd layer for putting my song. I'm almost always cutting with music in the background. So this is usually the way that I'd layer stuff. I'd have my audio on the 3rd layer for my song, and then my audio for my other clips on the next 2 layers. And so now if we zoom in, so if I bring in these 2 different clips, you can drag the video up and down to the different layers, and then you can drag it over top of the existing layer of video. If I was to drag it onto the same layer of video and drop it, what it's going to do is it's going to cut off this portion of the video clip. So now when I scrub through that, it's going to jump immediately into that next portion of the video, which is fine, because usually you're only going to be showing 1 layer of video. But sometimes, let's say you wanted to have 2 clips in the same time playing, and you might want to actually resize 1 clip or both clips to have them playing in the same shot. So that's when you would want to have the layer below and the layer above, that you want to hold on to both of them, because now you can have both of them playing at the same time. But if I hadn't done that and I just left this at full scale, then it's going to be the only thing that's visible. So this is why I use this effects control window a lot. And that's because I do a lot of adjustment of motion and movements in the existing video clip. Sometimes quite often will punch in on an image because it isn't cropped properly. And then, so I'll say scale it. Let's bring this back to normal. So let's say I don't like the framing on the right-hand side here. I feel like there's too much space. I can scale it, and then I can reposition the shot to how I like the shot to be sitting visually. And now it'll stay that way the whole time. You can even go a step further, and over here you have these little animation points. Those will create the keyframes, the same kind of keyframes that I was showing you earlier with the audio. Those will create keyframes that you can use for animation points. So I could say start right here with where I'd set up the scale at 115 and the position right here, these indicators for my position. I can move a little bit further down the clip, and then I could say scale this to 50% and position this over to be next to this clip. Let's make them the same size or something. And now this here is like a mini timeline as well that's in your effects control. You can zoom in on this as well, like up here. And all of these little windows are kind of adjustable and movable, but you can zoom in and manipulate frame by frame where you want these animation points to be. But what's happening is I set up this point, I set the clip to be positioned here at this point of the clip on the left-hand side with these little indicators, these little keyframes. And then I animated it to get smaller. Like you can see the animation taking place in between these 2 keyframes. And once it hits these keyframes, it's going to stop animating. And that's like a way you can apply animation within the clip. It's going to give you total control of the positioning, the scale, the size of your clip. And you achieve all of that over here in the effects control. And that's all by placing down different keyframes at different points. And if I move this closer, then that would be a much faster animation. Like that's much faster if I move it right next to it. It's just going to whip right down, right? And so on and so on and so on. Okay, anyways. But the reason you can see both of these clips in your project is because I've kept both shots on my timeline, one just layered over top of the other one. But like I said before, the one that's on the top will be the dominant clip. And so if I haven't scaled it down, that's going to be the only one that you can see. Right here, you can only see that one. So, okay. Does anybody have any questions? I know that this stuff is probably kind of complicated if you don't have the program directly in front of you, but. So I'm going to teach you about the Snap tool. This is a super, super handy tool. Above your video and audio over here, you have a bunch of tools over here up in the left of the timeline. You have the link selection. These are the ones that I use primarily. The marker is something that, say you get to a point in your clip that you want to remember for later. You can click the marker tool, and it's gonna leave an indicator on that clip at the exact moment that you want to reference to later on. You can even leave notes on it if you want to give it to an editor later on. If you need somebody to go through and do some more work, or say somebody's doing a bunch of work in After Effects on your project, you can leave little notes on your markers for the editor, so you don't have to send it in an email or that kind of thing. But so that's kind of handy. This little here is the link and unlink tool. This one is, you use it all the time. When you're learning your hotkeys, if you go to Premiere here, if you go up at the top left, keyboard shortcuts. If you open up your keyboard shortcuts, here's like the way that they've preset all of your shortcuts for editing. I would suggest going in here and making some of the adjusting some of the shortcuts the way that you feel works best for you. Either that or just immediately start memorizing some of these shortcuts. The ones that I use definitely the most are like the C and the V, the razor tool and the selection tool. I use those ones a lot for when I'm cutting down footage. But I've also set up a hotkey for linking and unlinking my clip, because that is something that you're going to use all the time. Because right now I have, with this button here, just above my timeline, with that button there, if I have that selected blue, now when I click on a clip, it's going to select both my audio and my video. And for the most part, you're not going to want to separate those two, because you want to have the audio recorded in the moment to be synced up with the visual in the moment. But there's going to be occasions when you're not going to be using the audio at all. Or let's say you have a really great audio clip from a bird that you filmed like an hour later on, and you want to use it for a different moment. Well, then you can click this link button, and it's going to give you the option to all of a sudden to separate and unlink those two clips. And now I can move these around and separate them entirely. When you do that, your clip is going to have pop up above it. It says like +41, -41. That for me is an indicator as to the fact that those two clips are no longer synced. As I move those closer, that number is going to get smaller and smaller until I have it over top of it and it's actually synced, and then that number will disappear. But if you have that number in one of your clips, that's going to be a good indicator to you that you have unsynced your clip and that your audio is no longer going to be matching exactly with your video. So it's not necessarily something to be like that worried about. And if it happens by accident, you can right click on it on the clip and just say move to sync, and then boom, it'll sync it back up. So that's an easy way to get those linked back up. But I jump between linking my clips and unlinking it all the time, because a lot of times I don't want to have them separated. I just want to move both the audio and the video together at the same time. That'd be like, I'd say most of the time it's going to be linked. So the other thing right next to it is the Snap tool. I have the Snap tool on all the time. I never take it off. If you take it off, you're going to start messing your project up quite dramatically. I think it's a really handy tool, because what it does is it'll immediately jump your clips to be connected to each other. So it's going to eliminate the option for you to be able to like fine tune within this little area here, unless you punch in on the image. So if you punch right in, then you can start using that space in between. But if you're punched out like here and you bring this clip in, it's gonna immediately connect to your other clip. Just it kind of like a magnet, just goes bang, bang. So that's definitely, just leave that locked on. It's going to be a huge help, and it's going to prevent you from messing up with cuts or edits that you like, shots that you'd chosen previously. Okay, I'm going to go through cutting the footage down. The best way that I find to cut the footage down, the fastest way, is I go through every single clip. So I've already brought the clips in and layered and put them down on a timeline. So now a lot of this will have the head and the tail of the clip that I was mentioning earlier, which is kind of the unusable footage, still intact. So if I choose my cut tool, which is over here on the left, there's a list of all the tools. It's like a type tool, that's for adding text. Hand tool, that's for moving around your image up in the screen. A lot of these I hardly ever use. For the most part, I'm just using the cut tool for the most part, and the rate stretch tool, which is no longer there. Oh, it used to be. Anyways, it's the new Premiere. They move things around. So if I push C or V, V will bring back my pointer. C will bring back my cut tool. So C and V, I jump through all the time. So let's go through my clip. Okay, I like that moment, and so I put a cut there, and then I go over to this moment, and the water spraying in front of Andrew. So maybe I think that's going to be a good place to cut. So I put a cut there, and I push V, which will give me my pen tool. And now what I would do is I just drag that up a layer. And by doing that, that'll indicate that this layer right here is the usable footage from that clip. So the first thing that I do when I'm going through a project is I'll bring in every single shot from the day, and I'll go through every single shot and indicate and cut out the usable portion of the shot. Some of the shots maybe are total garbage. Maybe you accidentally pushed record when you didn't mean to, and you filmed your foot for 5 seconds. And so, you can just click on that clip and then just say delete it. Okay, that shot's terrible. Okay, I don't like Andrew's face in this shot because it sucks. So delete Andrew's stupid face. And then go into here. Okay, I like this moment where Andrew's stuffing himself with food. So cut that part, cut that part, hit the V, raise that up. Do that for every single shot. And then when you've done that, it's going to be easy for you to just select all of the clips on the one layer below it, which would be, in theory, all of the stuff that you deemed unusable for your project. And then you can just delete it. And then the stuff that's going to be left there will be the usable shot. It'll be the stuff that's usable. But that's a good way for you to, in a more timely fashion, go through all of your content and cut out the usable part. Because if you're doing it all up in this window here, there's a lot more of a process going to the left, clicking on the next clip, going in here, choosing the in, the out point, grabbing it, dragging it down. Like that has about like 3 or 4 more steps to it than if you just scroll over your clips on your timeline here and just cut out what you deem to be the usable part, raise it up a level, and then you can just delete the part below it. I usually don't delete the part below it until the very end. I'll just raise that up a level. I'll go through every single clip and do that. And then at the end, I'll delete all the stuff that's at the bottom that's unusable. And then I have to do something called ripple delete, which will compress all of the stuff at the top. I'll show you. Like now these clips are all separated, but I want to have them connected. So you can do a thing called ripple delete. You right click on the space in between the clips, the empty space where there's no video. If you right click in between it and hit ripple delete, it'll like get rid of all that dead space, and it'll connect your 2 clips together. And now we're starting to look over stuff that's what I deem to be usable content. Okay, I'm actually going to open up my Spain project because that's a finished project, and I can start going over some of the edits that we were doing and why we're doing it. I'd say the most important thing that you can do though is right off the bat, start just familiarizing yourself with where the buttons are for like what does what, like where the cut tool is, and how the timeline looks. Because if once you wrap your mind around how the layering of the timeline looks, or how it works, and how it's laid out into frames and seconds, then the whole thing making a hell of a lot more sense as to how you're going to be putting together a video. Okay, I'm going to open up this video. Okay. It's just loading the video right here. So this is a completed video. One second. So I have on the left my organized folders. If I go to my sequences, I'm going to have a bunch of sequences here, but the main ones are Ibiza, Granada, Barcelona. Oh no, what happened? Jeez, just shut down. Let's try that again. Sorry about the wait on that. Okay, so if I open up these other sequences here, Barcelona, Granada, Ibiza. So if you look onto my timeline, you'll see that I have, they're labeled here. And that's kind of an obvious indicator as to what I'm working with. But here is all of the footage that I shot from Granada, cut down, or sorry, from Ibiza, cut down. So this is all the shots that I deemed as a usable shot. So all of this stuff was the stuff that could potentially be used. When you really go through a video and put it together, this stuff is like, even this shot here, like I think I ended up probably using maybe half a second of it. It's probably a 3-second long clip, but I ended up, even out of what I deemed usable, only using about half a second. But it kind of depends on what you're editing and your style and everything. But if I go to Barcelona, I ended up actually cutting the whole project together under the Barcelona sequence. But you can see here, this is like a completed project. I have my first 2 layers of audio, which I used for my video clips. And then my 3rd layer of audio is my song. Then above it, I've got 3 layers of video. The one on the bottom, I typically save for when we're cutting to visuals of us talking. Like if there's a part when there's dialogue. So here's a shot of myself in the Sagrada Familia, and I'm talking, but then I cut to visuals of the Sagrada Familia over top of me talking. I took the audio from the shot of inside the Sagrada Familia, this visual, I removed it so it didn't disrupt my audio. Here, let's see if I can, I don't know if you guys will be able to hear it very well, but every little inch is very intricately designed and is telling a story and represents something. Down in stained glass windows, or these columns, which are all in the shape of trees holding up, which looks like. So what's going on there with the audio is you can hear my audio and you can hear the music's audio, but the audio that I shot from the visuals, I removed entirely because it wasn't necessary and it was going to like kind of become overwhelming. But that's up to your own discretion. You might want to have more layers of audio in there. It could work better for your project, but it's kind of amazing how much freedom this program gives you, because you could probably make 30 layers of audio. You could, if you wanted to, I'm sure you could mix a song in just in the audio section here. If you got the beats and everything, you layered them down properly. But you can do really extensive stuff with the audio design and with the video design. I don't really jump too much. I don't really show 2 shots on screen at the same time that often. I do on the rare occasion, but for the most part, the visual that's on the higher layer, the video on the higher layer will be the one that is visual, will end up being the visual in my video. Okay. So let's say hypothetically, this shot here of the skateboarder.
Then we go for the parallels. These are not really famous.
Let's say hypothetically I wanted it to be a bit longer. You can just grab the end of that layer, which is right here. You can just grab it and you can start just dragging it out. As long as you filmed more in the moment and there was more actually of that visual, that clip recorded on that shot, well then you should be able to just drag it out to however long you want. And that'll
famous skate spot here
add more video. Like that little swerve you did at the end there, I didn't actually use that in the final cut.
Famous
I just cut it back to this guy talking about skateboarding in Barcelona. But the other thing, when you're cutting audio, a lot of times people will stutter and like like when we're doing our recaps, there's tons of audio that I actually end up cutting out, and I'll just splice 2 parts of the clip together. You know when you're watching like a vlog video on YouTube and it's just a shot of the person's head and they're all of a sudden jumping around because their audio is cut? They're like these weird audio and visual jump cuts. I think they look super tacky. I try not to use them at all. I don't think you'll see any of them in any of my videos, but a lot of YouTubers will use that effect. They'll just cut out a section of their dialogue and then just splice 2 shots together. And so then their head will all of a sudden like start jumping around, and the audio will kind of jump from one sentence to the next sentence, and they will have cut out, maybe they were rambling a bit and they'll have cut out the part that they figured was rambling and was unnecessary. I do that also, but I try to make it so it sounds as seamless as possible, and I will mask that edit in the audio by putting a visual over top of it. So if I go back here, I'm pretty sure that I cut right here. Oh no, I didn't. Let's say, okay. Let's say I'd put a cut right here. If I didn't put a visual, you can see how his head all of a sudden jumps over. It's a jump cut. These can be used stylistically. You can do it intentionally. If it's done well, they can look really cool. Some movies did it throughout the entire movie, and it can have a style to it. For the most part, I think that if they're not done intentionally, they look pretty terrible. So I would be inclined to use another visual to mask that cut in his audio. Because I'm cutting up the audio all the time. I'm always taking out moments. I'm splicing sentences together. Sometimes I'll completely change the way somebody had delivered a sentence just by cutting up their audio and splicing 2 portions of it together, and then it becomes almost an entirely new sentence delivered in a more appropriate way. But I'll have hidden that underneath layers of video. But the only way you can do that is by putting an actual layer of video over top of it to mask the layer of video underneath of it. Okay, let's see what you got here. Do you have some sort of criteria to qualify which clips are going to be a part of the video you are doing and which ones to be cut out? Because it seems like it would take you a lifetime to choose which was which. Yeah, so Edward, you know, for the most part, when I'm going out and filming, like I know how I edit, so I typically film for my style of editing. So I'll go out and I'll shoot a scene, and like almost every single clip, I will have had some intention on how I wanted to film it. So maybe it's a rack focus, there'll be something in focus, and then a rack to something else that's in focus. maybe I'll just do a wide shot and somebody walks through the shot and then they enter and exit, in which case I might want to use the entirety of that clip. So usually there's a point in every single clip that I was aiming to capture. And I shoot but I shoot a lot of clips. So when I do my initial cut down and I go through my timeline and I cut down all my footage, I'll cut out what I feel I was intending in the moment. And then I'll cut out all the crap that was before and after it, because there's almost always a moment that's not usable. Like a moment where I finished getting the shot and then I just put my hand down and push the record button. Like that motion down, I'm probably not going to use it because it probably wasn't intended. Sometimes maybe you can steal one of those motions and add an edit to it and use it, but that's going to be up to you in the moment. But it is definitely a time-consuming process. But once you cut down all your usable shots, it's going to be much easier for you to go through and kind of start picking out what you feel is going to be appropriate for the scene. So, yeah, I try to go with as smooth a shot as I possibly can. And another reason why I shoot almost everything at 60 frames a second is because, let's say you're on a boat and it's pretty shaky, and you manage to get just 1 second of pretty stable video. Well, then you can in post slow that down dramatically. So now it's a 2-second shot, and the slow motion actually adds as a smoothing effect to it. It'll make your shot really smooth. But that'll be like, I always try to find the smoothest, best frame in every shot. I don't like it if there's a sudden jerky camera movement. I don't really like zooms. If I have a zoom in a shot, it's usually because I was rushed in composing 2 shots. So I'll do it in 1 shot. I'll get a wide shot of somebody and then I'll quickly zoom in on their eyes or on their face. And then when I go through that clip later on, I'll just like cut out the portion of that where there was a zoom, and I'll use just the wide shot and the zoomed in shot of the eyes, and I'll cut those back to back, like cut from one to the next one. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, cool. Okay. So with the skateboarding section, I thought it'd be kind of fun to go through because I use a lot of different components here. Like first off, I started off with a bunch of stuff from
so legendary in the skate world.
A drone. Like these shots are from a drone, and I think that I've punched in
skateboard videos.
Oh, 1 second.
We went to MACBA, which is so legendary in the skate world.
So what I'm doing a lot of here is I'm jumping from like in speeds, like I'm altering my speed, and that's because I shot everything at 60 frames a second. So in doing so, I can jump, like I made a cut in this clip right here. If you're looking down at the timeline, I made a cut here. So if I go and find my rate, so I have this going at 100. One second, sorry. By choosing like a different frame rate, you can manipulate the speed of your clip, and this can be really effective. So with the skateboard scenes, I chose to slow-mo down the part where the trick was happening, and I sped up the part where the person's skating in and about to do a trick, and then I sped it up when they were landing a trick, and I could jump between the 2 speeds because I'd filmed the whole thing at 60 frames a second. I could have chosen to play it up just in normal speed, the way it looked to the human eye in the moment, or I can choose to slow it right down. So these are kind of like a little bit more advanced editing techniques. But you can see it's going to go from a slow motion shot to a fast motion shot. So the shot, it's all part of the same shot, but I'm just cutting it up and splicing the 2 shots together. So one portion of it's fast, the next portion of it's slow. And that's a really fun effect to play with. It really will bring a new element to your video. But you'll be able to mess around with that once you start wrapping your mind around the way that the timeline works and operates. But I don't even think that iMovie works with a timeline like this. I think it's a bit of a different splicing process, isn't it? Austin, you were using iMovie, or it was Daniel, David, you were using one, right? iMovie. It does, in 1 second. It doesn't even, does it have a timeline like that? The one that Mike was using, it does? Okay, so maybe they changed it, but, so you have a small grasp on how timelines work then, right?
Yes.
This is where all the magic happens, guys. You just got to figure out this kind of stuff, and then your creativity is going to just come right out of you. But you have to understand like how to slow things down, speed things up, and just splice things together. If I go to my audio levels, a lot of times if you put a clip, like some clips next to each other, and you don't put like something to blend the two audio levels together, then what happens is you're gonna get like a popping sound, or like I feel like as an editor, you're always trying to mask your edit or make it so it's as seamless an edit as possible. It's pretty noticeable when it's like, when there's bad audio jumps, especially with bad audio jumps, you can really notice an edit as opposed to just kind of losing yourself in the visual. So you want to be wary of your audio pops in and out. You might want to use the audio that was captured in the moment from both clips, but like if I play this out, you can't really hear it on your end, but as it cuts in, there's like a pop. There's a popping sound. And so with your effects, I haven't really gone over the effects yet, but there's going to be video and audio effects that the program offers, and audio transitions and video transitions. With the audio transitions, you can place that in between these two clips, and it's going to smooth out the audio. In between, so right here where it says constant gain, you can either use constant power or constant gain. That's like a method of splicing those two audio clips together. Or it's like a fade effect in between those two audio clips. Don't ask me what those mean. Essentially, it's like just, they essentially do the same thing, constant gain or constant power. You can use either one for the most part. But you can lengthen that or shorten it. And what it's going to do is it's going to, over the course of the length here on this clip, it's going to slowly fade in the audio from the following clip. And then on the course of this portion here that's going into the following clip, it's going to slowly fade out the audio from the previous clip. So it's going to create this like splicing of the two audio clips. I use this all the time because to smooth out my audio. I'll find like a volume level that's appropriate for both of those clips. And then on the majority of my shots, I'll put one of these little like fade in, fade out crossfades, and that'll smooth out your audio dramatically. And it's going to make it so it's a much, much more appealing video to watch, as opposed to it just jumping like, bam, like now you're in this scene, now you're in this scene. So, but you can use that intentionally if you want to, like you can have a quick jump in if you want to grab the audience's attention. All of a sudden, like if say you're going scuba diving, and the second you go under the water, the audio cuts because all of a sudden you're underwater, and so you're no longer hearing anything. So you can cut, say you're playing a song and you've got this audio from birds and everything while your camera's above the water, and then you duck it below. You might be inclined to not put a fade effect there. You might be inclined to all of a sudden just jump dramatically into the audio from being under the water because you want to have that effect. So you can use that to your advantage, but you usually would want to be pretty intentional with that. For the most part, I find it's better to have some sort of a splice in between the two audio clips to smooth that out. Okay. Maybe we'll go over some of the video effects and audio effects. Or how about, I typically don't use video effects too often. There's a couple of them that I find are pretty handy. There'll be something like vertical flip or horizontal flip, where, you know, maybe I was hanging upside down on a boat, filming the bottom of the boat, and I had the camera upside down. So then when I bring the shot back up, I'll have the shot was like reversed. And then in post, I can use horizontal flip or vertical flip and just flip the camera around. So all of a sudden, you know, the shot will be right side up. But it's kind of like fun to go through these and play with them. A lot of them are pretty tacky. There'll be like ripple effect, and it'll add like the visual element of their water being in your shot, or like a wave in your shot. A lot of those optical effects, I never use them. And one thing that I almost never ever use is a video transition. I'll show you how those work. I do sometimes use them, and I did use it actually in this video at one point, and I'll show you where. But I'm always really intentional with it. But if we do like a video transition, video transition, they've made tons of these things. So they're almost, some of them are like wipes. Like if you watch Star Wars, all the Star Wars movies has a very like stylistic wipe they did, where it's like up in the corner and it goes kind of on an angle across the entire shot. And that's how they fade from one scene to the next scene. If next time you watch Star Wars, you'll notice it all the time. And they chose to do that all the time in that video just to like add a style or into that movie. But for the most part, I never use those kind of things. They look really kind of like high school art class video kind of crap. But if you do like say a cross dissolve, so what that's going to do on the video, if you drop it on your 2 video clips, let's make this a little bit bigger. So if you grab it and drop it in between 2 video clips, you can see in the middle here, there's like, these are 2 different clips and there's a cut in the middle. So if I grab and drop that in the middle, it's going to slowly fade in the next shot. So I find a lot of people when they're first starting editing, they do this all the time. They'll do this almost like every single shot. I would suggest not doing it almost ever. I think it looks really tacky. It looks like you didn't take the time to find a point of your shot that would be seamless to edit with another one. So try not to do it unless it's really intentional. So I'll show you where I used it, and it worked really well. The beginning of this, we went to Granada. So right around here. Okay, so I put a fade effect right here. So what I've done, is I intentionally shot this bush to come right past my screen. And I did it a couple times. And so what I've done is I did one of those fade effects in between these 2 shots to mask that I'm going from one shot to another shot. So it's hardly noticeable. But these are 2 completely separate shots that I filmed, but I just used the bushes to be able to mask and edit. So it looks pretty seamless. So if I play it back, like all of a sudden there's this church, but you know, those 2 bushes were in completely different places. I just used them to blend and mask a shot. So that's where I used like a visual cross dissolve, a video cross dissolve intentionally to mask an edit, because I was trying to hide the edit. A lot of times I don't want the edit to be seen. I want something in the shot to be masking that cut. You can get really creative with it, but that'll kind of help bring a more professional element to your video if you're trying to make the edits not as noticeable. Okay, so let's go to my song. Okay, if you look at the song clip here, or the look at this audio clip. One second, sorry. That's not a good example. So on my audio, my song clip right here, you can see the waveform. You can see little moments where it jumps up. And these are all indicators of maybe like a snare drum or of a kick in the song or of a bass, like or some sort of point of impact. So you'll see a lot of the times where there is a jump. Hang on 1 second, I'm just gonna. Okay, so like a lot of times where there is a jump, you're gonna see there's a cut in my video. And that's because I'm editing to certain portions of the song. And these little jumps are gonna be a good reference point, like a visual reference point for points of the song when you where you're going to have like a kick or a snare. And that those might be points of the song when you want to do an edit, where you want to splice your visual in there. I find the way that the human eye works, like I always cut my visual maybe 2 to 3 frames before the punch that I want it to hit. It's like I don't do it right on the moment. It's a little bit too late. It doesn't look as good. So this is a good little hint. Do it about like 3 frames before, and you're going to find that it's much more visually appealing for the visual to kick in and then to hear a drum or a snare. Visual kick in and then a drum or a snare. If you do it right on the moment, you kind of miss the beat, you miss the point, and you're not going to get that flow of video music as well as if you cut the video a little bit before the audio, just a little bit. So that's a really good hint there. The other thing that I do is when I first started editing, it was really easy to cut on the snare or like the hi-hat, like some really like profound portion of the song. But I found later on that if I wanted my edits to be less noticeable and for people to lose themselves in my video more, then I tended to cut at a less predictable point in the song, and then I'd use those hi-hat sounds or maybe like a strong part of a vocal, something like that to add or to like complement my video. So if there's a moment where somebody's giving a high five to somebody, like I'll cut the video before the high five happens, and then I'll cut the high five to happen at the same point where there's a punch in the song. So instead of cutting the video on that punch, cut it so that there's a portion of your visual that happens on that punch. I'll show you. I've got this guy high-fiving people. I think it's right here.
Vocals.
Let's cover that one.
Luckily,
I think I'm using a lot of RAM right now. So I cut this portion of the song when I'm introducing this skateboarder, and then when he goes downstairs and he starts like high-fiving all these guys, I used the visual of him high-fiving to hit parts of the song.
a guy named Wax Wagner at the hostel, and he was
You can see that.
one of the.
So it's really subtle, but it's very effective. And so with all of my edits, I'm almost always intentional with every single shot. There's some sort of intention as to why I cut it then.
Wax Wagner at the hostel.
This is kind of establishing,
and he was
building character. It's showing him in the hostel, high-fiving everybody, and the high fives are hitting on the beat of the song. So that's adding pacing, adding momentum in the song. And so this is all stuff that you want to start factoring in after you've kind of taught yourself how to layer your clips or drop your stuff down on the timeline. But it gets super nerdy and a bit monotonous, and I'm paying attention to very, very, very fine details in my visual to be matching with my audio. The other thing that I do quite often is I'll add sound effects to help a visual as well. So here we had this drone shot, and we're talking about going to these caves, and the caves were kind of up on this hillside. So I wanted to punch in to the hillside. So I did an effect that I used, that I created in After Effects, and I'm not going to get into that now, but I used, if you listen, you can hear this whoosh audio sound as the camera punches in, because I animated the camera motion in post-production, but I added the sound effect to kind of make you feel like we actually physically moved there. Let's see if I can. There's another thing, guys. When you're looking at your timeline down here, you see this bar above it. It has this clip that's red, and this line that's yellow and then broken up by red. The red is indicating that there's an effect placed on one of these clips that needs to be rendered out for you to be able to watch it smoothly. So what I had done on this clip is I found that it had a bit of noise to it. So I went in and I used a program to remove the noise, but it's like a third-party program. And what it ended up doing was it ended up making it so that I have to render out that clip if I want to watch it smoothly. So if you're adding a lot of effects to your video, you're going to find sometimes that portions of it are going to turn out to be red, in which case you just need to kind of select the area on the bar above that you're going to be viewing. And then if you hit enter, it'll render out those clips so that you can play it back in smooth motion. And so that otherwise when you play it back, it's going to have a lagginess and a jumpiness to it. And when you're watching it, it's going to be harder for you to have an indication of things you might want to change, or if the clip is working, if that clip is lagging dramatically, or maybe flat out won't even play on your computer. So you want to render that out, and then that's going to give you a smoother playback. So I'm going to render this out right now before I just show you this clip. Does anybody have any questions? It's probably tons to go through, hey? A lot of it's just kind of confusing to look at unless you have the program in front of you. So I would strongly suggest that all of you go to Adobe, create an account, and just get their free 1-month course, and then start putting together something on the timeline and just start orienting yourself with the timeline. Because all of this will make a lot more sense when you have a grasp on how the timeline works. Okay, let's see. So here's a moment where I used motion in the camera to help and edit. Like, this is all intentional. There's on the hillside above Granada are these cave homes that were built by gypsies like hundreds of years ago. And they've actually now, I don't know if you could hear that, but hundreds of years ago. And they've actually now, can you hear that? Hundreds of years ago. And they've actually now, so that sound, it's from a sound effects folder that I have. And I just stole that and used that to add to help that image. Because it's a punch in, I just masked a cut between a 4K drone shot to another drone shot on the hillside. And they've actually now, but it makes the whole clip work. It feels like you physically moved to the hillside with that punch in, but it's the audio that like added to that clip. So doing a good audio design is really going to help out your editing. Hundreds of years ago. And they've actually now put up, so that's why you're going to want multiple layers of audio, because you're going to want to bring in all these other audio clips to help add to your visual. And having more of that kind of stuff adds a lot of depth. So a lot of times I'll have, maybe I'll have somebody talking. Oh, is it 20 months? $20 a month for Premiere and After Effects? Maybe you know what? I'm theoretically, in the eyes of Adobe, I'm a student, and so I pay I think 270, I think it was like 280 Canadian dollars, maybe. So it's probably like 220 American dollars for the whole package, and that's for an entire year. So that's a good way to go. How did you blend those two shots? You fast feed each one. The blend with those shots is in an effect in After Effects. It's as I dramatically zoom in, I'm adding a motion blur to the clip, and because it's a 4K shot, I can punch in quite a lot. And so if I do it really fast and I add a motion blur, and then I add a similar punch in on the following clip, zoom out to punch in, you can mask the two of those if it's done really fast. And it looks pretty sharp. And they've a lot of these little like finer detail edits, this kind of stuff, YouTube all the way. You can just go into YouTube, look up zoom in effect, After Effects, zoom in effect, Premiere, and there's going to be somebody who did a specific tutorial on that exact effect. So that's a really good way to like learn little tricks. I try to like add new elements to almost every single one of my videos. That was, at least when I was learning, I would always try to do something new in each one of my videos so that I could teach myself. I think at this point I've taught myself quite a bit, so I don't necessarily do that as much. But in the learning phase, I would say every time you start a new project, teach yourself how to do one of these effects. It might take you 4 hours to nail it, but once you've done it, then you have that knowledge and you can apply it to future projects. So always do that. That is a nested sequence. So a nested sequence, yeah, there's a question about nested sequence. if I change, okay, so there's an effect called warp stabilizer. I think I was talking to David a bit. David, I was mentioning warp stabilizer to you the other day when I was going over hyperlapses. So the way the warp stabilizer works is it's a digital, it like digitally smooths out a shot. So if in the moment, let's say you're on, I'll use the example of being on a boat again. And so maybe I had my glide cam and I'm shooting on the boat, but the glide cam wasn't enough for me to remove all the bumpiness from a shot. I can go into my effects and I can apply, it's called warp stabilizer. It's this effect. It's going to be over in your effects. You can just, when you're going to your search window for effects, just type in like warp. It'll pop up, warp stabilizer. So the warp stabilizer, that's going to smooth out your shot. It does it digitally, so a lot of the times it won't work. If there's too dramatic a movement in your shot, then you can't apply a warp stabilizer on it. But the other thing is you can't apply a warp stabilizer, sorry, my tongue's getting away, a warp stabilizer on your shot if you've altered the speed of your shot. For some reason, it won't let you do it just fluently in the program. What you have to do is you have to create a nested sequence. It's kind of hard for me to explain, but if you right click on a clip and then go through these options here, you're going to have a whole bunch of different options that you can play with your clip. But it's going to say, give you the option for nest. And then it'll say, okay, make it a nested sequence. And so what that does is if you've applied a bunch of effects to your clip and then you create it as a nested sequence, then it'll almost like just lock in all of those effects and bring it back. So it's like editable in another way. Like if I wasn't able to apply a warp stabilizer on it because I had adjusted the speed, then I would make that video with the adjusted speed, a nested sequence, and then I would apply the warp stabilizer, and then the warp stabilizer would work. It's kind of a hard one to explain, but that's how you'd get around that little trick if you're trying to add warp stabilizer to a sped up shot. But that's kind of more advanced stuff. Let's see. I say when I want to slow-mo a shot and stabilize it, always comes up with a nested sequence, but never understood what it meant, what it did meant. Yeah, so that's kind of, so are you talking about what I just mentioned there? Like you can't stabilize a slowed shot? I'm assuming that's what you meant, Charlie. Yeah, I mean, it does that for me also. You just make it into a nested sequence, and then all of a sudden you can edit it, you can manipulate it. I think it just kind of like solidifies that clip is now like adjusted for speed and adjusted for whatever else you've applied to it, and then you can do a warp stabilizer. Okay. Let's see what else I've got here. Got a bunch of notes. So I think creating pacing, I'm going to go over pacing a bit. When you're creating a project, it's important for you to be pretty, like obviously music is a huge component. I spend so much time searching for the right songs to put in my video. This video here, I started off in Spain, in Granada, and I know the way that I felt when I was there, so I tried to find a song that would kind of cater to that feeling. So I chose this really like authentic Spanish guitar. You can hear that. And you can kind of hear the tempo of the song. It's really slow. It's not like a driving house song. Whereas all of a sudden, after this, I felt, okay, you know, I've forced people to watch just kind of slow, panning, beautiful shots of a castle for 3 minutes, and I might be losing their attention. So I wanted to jump into Ibiza we didn't even travel to Ibiza right after this. We traveled to Barcelona, but I felt it was appropriate for me to jump directly into Ibiza and just start and just grab your attention. So I chose a different song, like
Tokyo, London, New York.
Like it's gonna be much
like that.
This play can be much faster paced music. And that's to grab the attention of the audience. It's got like these really hard hitting sound effects.
I ripped it up properly one day, and that almost knocked me on my ass for the whole 3 days that we were staying there.
But that's all, like the intention behind choosing that song for this section is to create pacing. I want to grab the audience's attention. I want it to be hard hitting, fast paced. That's usually kind of the more fun stuff to cut, but it also helps convey an emotion. So the first part is very kind of tranquil, relaxing. I chose a slow tempo song, and then I kind of held on my cuts and my edits longer than when I was cutting together the skateboard scene, when I was cutting together the scene in Ibiza. Those are like boom in your face. That's kind of the way that I initially taught myself, was much more fast paced, like high energy, really grab your attention. But you're going to want to learn how to do it all. So definitely approaching a project with like a slower tempo and having slower cuts is going to add to your visual, add to the emotion you're trying to convey. And so you want to teach yourself how to do pacing. Sometimes I find, like if I'm cutting to a song and maybe it's like a house song and there's a 4 count, there's always like a kind of a really consistent 4 count in electronic music. So I'll find as I'm leading up to like a strong buildup in the visuals, maybe I'll cut each clip to be a second long, maybe a little bit less or something like that, and have those keeping the pace. And then all of a sudden I'll ramp it up and I'll cut stronger visuals to be even half the speed of that. But when you watch that, when you play it back, all of a sudden the audience can be like, whoa, like now it's really getting into it, because all of a sudden it's like boom, 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 right in your face, right? So that's a good way for you to help create pacing and to help capture maybe the excitement of a moment, is by choosing the speed of the clips you're cutting. You don't want to necessarily cut 2 shots really, really quick and then have 1 shot super slow. And then, I don't know, I mean, it depends. You play it back and see if it looks smooth and seamless, but I usually have a pretty consistent pacing going in my videos. I also, a lot of times will cut around the audio. I'll use parts of the vocals as, like say all of a sudden this woman is she's singing a song, and then all of a sudden she just belts out this really high note and holds it for a long time. Maybe I'd be more inclined for that moment when she starts belting out this high note to hold on a clip for a long period of time. Maybe it's a long drone shot of a sunset, something, and her voice is held for a long time. Maybe I'll hold that shot for the entire length of her singing, and I'll use kind of her visual to be the indicator as to when I should be making a cut around that song. So this is all like, once you familiarize yourself with the timeline, it's all going to fall into place, and you can just start messing around and choosing when to cut, how fast you want to do your cuts. And it gets really, really fun, guys. Like I strongly suggest, like I said, downloading this Adobe. There's something about the songs that we use. Okay, so we actually are lucky enough to have a music sponsor. There's a channel on YouTube called Monstercat, and they've sponsored us. So they've got about 100 musicians underneath their label that produce pretty amazing electronic music. So I can use all of that music without asking for the rights or releases. In previous videos that I made when I wasn't working on the Global Degree Project, I'm a music nerd. I've got a music library of like 33,000 songs. So a lot of times I'd hear a song and I just loved it. And, you know, that song really made me have an impact on me, and really made me feel an emotion. And I would almost like translate visually into a video that I wanted to cut to it. So I'd use the song that I knew would be perfect for, for a day of snowboarding, or let's say I filmed a wedding, maybe it's really romantic or something like that. So right now I'm using music that I have at my disposal through Monstercat. I also have purchased a subscription with a web page called Artlist, and I think it was for $200 a year, and they've got a huge music selection, and I could use all of that stuff without having to ask for rights releases. Okay, exporting settings. Yeah, let's go through some exporting settings for sure, guys. So when you're finally done your project, so here's my whole project here, zoomed out. I would take these bars here, and I would go and cover up the entire thing. These, you can see these blue bars and lines. So those are indicating to me exactly like how much of the timeline I'm selecting to be exported. So I'm going to start from the very beginning of my clip. Maybe I want to start at a couple frames of black before it actually cuts in. Maybe I want to cut it directly into it. So I just bring it to there. Go to the very end of the clip of the timeline, my entire project. That's all of a sudden the end of it. So then I've selected all of that stuff. So file, oh, that's a good shot to stop on. There it is. Ibiza. Okay, file, export, media. So if you go file up at the top, oh, let's get out of this actually, let's do that again. If you go file at the top, go down to export, export media. It's gonna bring up this next window. Now, I export everything at H.264. It's going to give you in here options for exporting just a JPEG. Maybe you want to take out just a single frame of your video and make it a photograph. It's going to give you the option to do like MP3s or MPEG-4s. Some of these maybe it'll just be audio. Maybe you only want an audio track. So you can choose different options in here. But if you're exporting your video, for the most part, you're going to be doing it at H.264. Below that, it's going to give you a bunch of options here. So now what are you exporting it for? If I'm exporting it for, if I know I'm exporting it for YouTube, I can go down to YouTube here and I can choose different resolution settings. So it goes 2160p, that's what it says 4K next to it. That's if I'm exporting a 4K resolution project. I'm doing all my projects right now at 1080p. So I'd be clicking on YouTube 1080p if I thought it was only going to be for YouTube. But I know that I'm going to be using the video for probably a bunch of different things. So I would go HD 1080p 23.976. If I choose HD 1080p 29.97, it's going to export it at 30 frames, even though I did my entire project at 24 frames. So you want to choose the correct frame rate. So 23.976. Now if you look here, output name. So I'm going to go to my desktop. I chose Content Creator Series Project. This is the folder that I made at the beginning. And so I probably would have all of the components of my project saved in here. And that's going to be including auto save points. That's something else I have to get into, guys. You need to set up auto save on your project. The second you input Adobe into your computer or get onto your computer, you're going to have to go to your preferences and make sure that auto save is set up. It's going to save your ass because on occasion the program crashes, and it does happen. It doesn't happen too often, especially with a Mac, but it has happened to me on almost every project I've worked on. And so the worst case scenario, like if I set it up so it's every 15 minutes it auto saves. Worst case scenario, I lose 14 minutes worth of work because it'll save every 15 minutes. So you want to definitely have that set up. Otherwise, you could lose an entire day's worth of footage, and that's just like what a waste. That'd be such a heartbreaker. Anyways, so when you're choosing your save point, just choose it. You can choose where to save it, but I would usually just put it in the project folder that I just created. Down here, it's going to give you a couple more options. I usually don't mess with any of this kind of stuff. At the very bottom, it's going to show you an estimated file size. It's 2,793 megabytes. So that's a pretty big project. I think it ended up being nearly 13 minutes long. Exporting it at as high resolution as I possibly can, it's turning into almost a 3 gigabyte file. So that's a pretty big video. If you guys want to see this video, it's up on YouTube too. Also, we just posted it like 2 days ago. It's pretty fun. So you have at the bottom here 2 different options that you might want to go with. Either direct export. If I click that right now, it's going to just start exporting it at all of these settings that I've set it up to. If I hit Q, then it's going to open up another program, Media Encoder. So sometimes you want to do what's called like a batch edit. So if I wanted to say edit this video into 3 different segments, I didn't want to have it as one consistent video, or maybe I had cut 3 different videos in 3 different sequences in my project. And so I had a separate video for Granada, I had a separate video for Barcelona, and I had a separate video for Ibiza. Well, then I could queue it. So now like it's going to pop up in here as this right here, as a queued video. And then I can go back into my project, choose a different portion of the video, say File, Export, Media, and then let's say queue that one. And so that'll bring up the media encoder again. And it'll actually start like giving you an option to export multiple videos in a row. So I could export 3, and then because say maybe you want to go for lunch and it's just, and the export's going to take 2 hours. You could have it export 3 different videos by queuing it up in your media encoder. And then you don't have to worry about like exporting one video, coming back, choosing the segment for the second video, exporting that, coming back. You can do it all in one render, one export. So it's like a batch export. So hopefully that helped. Yeah, if you go up here, File, Preferences. Oh. The other thing you can do is you can choose to just export the video clip, or you can just choose to export the audio. Sometimes I'm just exporting, or if I'm creating, say, a time lapse, and I know that in the moment the audio is totally unusable. I'm not using the audio at all. I'll just export the video portion of it, and I'll click off the audio portion. That way, it's a smaller file, and you save some room, because maybe it's only the visual that you're looking for. Okay, so if you go Preferences. What was it? Let's go General. Project autosave. So right here, when you first set it up, if you go to your Preferences, autosave, automatically save project every 15 minutes, and you can change the amount of versions you have. I have 20 versions. You could probably do 5, but if you have 5 versions, then after it's done 5 autosaves, the next autosave will be over top of the first one, and it'll do another 5, and it'll just start overwriting your previous autosaves. But for the most part, you're not going to be jumping back too many autosaves. You're probably going to be only ever jumping to the most recent one if your project was to crash. So you definitely need to set that up, because it'll be heartbreaking if you don't, and you don't have an autosave going. Okay. So is there anything else you guys want me to go over at the moment? Anything else that was cutting dialogue? Yeah, I kind of went over the cutting dialogue. You can, like I said, it's really easy to just cut out certain portions of somebody's dialogue. And if you mask the visual edit with another visual over top on a layer, you can splice those 2 audio parts together and make it sound like a seamless sentence. So if somebody's kind of stutters, going all the time, I would be inclined to cut out some of their uhs and just make it so that their speech pattern was more seamless and more appealing to listen to, and you can deliver a message much quicker. Also, a lot of the times when I'm cutting, where do you back up your videos? In an external drive? Yeah, I use external hard drives. I've got like tons and tons of external hard drives. But then I upload them onto YouTube at the highest resolution I can. So to some degree, they're saved there. If, say, my apartment burnt down in a fire and I lost everything, then all of my work would be, for the most part, saved there. I also like, with this project, all of the stuff that I filmed is in a couple different locations. So hypothetically, my apartment burns down, all of my content, all my videos are saved on hard drives that are at Mike and Andrew's place. So I wouldn't lose any of that stuff. Yeah. Any tips on titles and how to use all the settings in there? Yeah. So they just kind of changed the titling. I'll show you. Let's see. I use titles all the time. Definitely for like down here, I have Mike freestyling. And so the audio wasn't perfect in the moment, and he's rapping with a couple layers of audio, so I wanted it to be pretty clear to hear what he was saying. So okay, so this was all by using the titler. So if you go up to the top here, say File, New, and go down Legacy Title, that's going to open this title window. I usually type in what the title is going to be as the name of my title. So let's say 360 flip. 360 flip. Cool. And then I usually just copy it, Control C, copy that. I'll open up my titler, Control V, and that'll drop it down. So now I have a title. Now you're gonna have tons of different options to change this, choosing your font, choosing the size, choosing a lot of different things. I'm consistently using the same font with certain little things done to it to do all of my subtitling. So I have down here saved like my subtitled text that I've chosen. So that's going to be kind of like a part of my style guide for the season's worth of the season's videos. Last year I used what was it, Century Gothic. This year we're doing Futura. That was a choice that we made, but where I'm going to do that consistently all year, so every video has kind of a style that looks consistent. So once you drop that down, you can start moving it around. There's going to be options on the side here that are pretty handy. These little like centering options, if you want to move, oh sorry, like right here, if I click this, it's going to move it into the center. So if I put up in the corner here, it's going to move it into the center, and then boom, into the center. So now that's totally centered. If I go, weird, 1 second. You should be able to find, oh here, sorry, I don't know why the screen is so big, weird. Okay, so on the side here, you have font size, so I can start manipulating all of that, make it much bigger. What I've done, because I'm just using flat white text, some of the shots, maybe there'll be a bright point in the shot that's almost white, in which case there isn't going to be a separation between the text and the visual behind it. This here, like, I could probably get rid of this drop shadow and you can still read it. But I put a little bit of a drop shadow on all of my subtitles. And then at the bottom here, I use some of these functions to make it so it's not such like a harsh, sharp drop shadow. I put my size to about 15, make my distance, you can make my distance, leave it at 10 or something. But that's going to give you a bit of a separation. So I use that for all of my subtitles. So drop a little drop shadow behind it, and then it doesn't matter what the visual is behind it, that drop shadow is going to cause a bit of a separation. It's going to make it much easier to read. With titling, like if doing elaborate titling, if we go to the beginning of my video, so once I've done that, then you can actually, you can drop that. You can it'll create it on the left-hand side here. You can see it's in my sequence folder, but I probably put it in my other material folder. So it'll actually become like a part of your project. If I click on it, it'll open it back up. But that's going to be a clip that you can drop into your timeline. So if you go over the visual that you want, say it's this part where he's running down these stairs. So maybe I'll just drag that into the timeline, zoom in. I have it set up so it's only one frame. And then I can drop that over for the length of the time that I want it to be there. Now you can put a title in there. There's going to be a lot more stuff going on with titling if you want to start doing animation and stuff. If you go at the beginning of our video, if you can watch how the titles come in on this. So everything aside from this last one, like this last global degree shot, that was also, once again, it was done in After Effects. It's not done in Premiere because I added a motion blur to the logo coming in, the title coming in. This is where you're going to want to start mucking around with After Effects, because it's going to take all of this kind of motion graphic stuff to the next level and make it really professional looking. All of these animations, I'm pretty fluent with After Effects, but a lot of like these really, really good looking animations, I didn't do these myself. I might have adjusted them and customized them a little bit, but I actually purchased a preset video where this, instead of saying 195 countries, it probably said the name of the animator and then said at the side, like next to it, titling animation kit. But it had all the animation points already in the clip. So I could go in there and I could just customize it so it said what I want, and I could put whatever visual I want behind it. But I did that all in After Effects. So if you want to get these kind of titles, you're going to have to teach yourself After Effects. Andrew's going to be going over After Effects in next weekend's session. So we're going to be covering quite a bit of that. That one is, you're gonna like that one. That's a fun one to learn. But hopefully that helped with titling a little bit. Once also, like I was saying before, with this effects control window up here, if I bring in my title, that one that I just made, 360 flip, actually I have a good example of it. When I went to that part with Ibiza, so we were making this joke the whole time, you know, those techno songs where it's like Tokyo, Ibiza, like that kind of stuff. We did that the whole time we were in Ibiza, so we put this in there as a joke. But I did this animation on the text in Premiere. I didn't do it in After Effects. This kind of stuff's super easy, and that's entirely just using, like up here on the left, using the effects folder. And then all I did is I went to scale, I made a keyframe, then I went a little bit further, and I made the scale to 120. And then I went the same distance further, and I made the scale to 100. And then I just copied it and I pasted that. And so then it just pulsates. You know, it looks, if I did it in After Effects, it would have looked way better, but I wanted it to be tacky. It looks stupid, but it's supposed to be funny. So I thought it kind of worked. But you know, those kind of basic animations are really easy to do in Premiere if you want for your titling. I could have lowered this to 0, and then like you could have a much more dramatic effect on there. Make that one 0, make that one 0, make that one 0. So now, right? Like it's way more dramatic. It's pretty stupid, but you know, once you start learning the functions of this, it's the world is your oyster. The creativity just will come right out of you, but it's all going to be entirely about just figuring out where the buttons are and how the timeline works. But all the tools are going to be at your disposal, and then like now I've been doing it for so long that it's just become kind of almost an extension of me. If I think of an idea, I can pretty much go and achieve it. But that's because I've gone through the process of learning where all the buttons are and what they all do. And you know, it's definitely a lot of practice, but it's so fun once you finally finish a video. This video for Spain, I think, was probably 50 hours of editing. It's not a quick process, and I'm not a slow editor. But don't let that discourage you. Like, definitely. Here's a moment where I chose to cut in the audio dramatically. I didn't fade in my audio. I cut in the audio like really hard just to kind of grab your attention. All of these shots didn't have a fade. So it's going to be lots of sound effects of the boat going, and I was cutting that kind of to the music to add almost another element to the music as well. And you hear that water hitting the lens, you know, that sound effect is going to help impact the moment so much more. If I took that audio out, it's, you know, it still is going to be fun to watch, but it's not going to be as engaging as if you like making you feel like you're right there having the water soak you coming over the boat and just spraying in your face. So that's where like audio design is going to be really important. one more thing about audio. If you look over on the left here, or sorry, on the right, you can see these vibrating lines. And then over, now it has like a red bar at the top here. That red bar indicates to me that the audio level jumped so high that it peaked. And in which case it's like, there's a loss of information there. It's sort of like with the photography. If you have a totally exposed shot, overexposed shot, then it just becomes white and there's no information there to give it like a range. Like this, that one part of the song will have like peaked and it's not going to sound very good on a lot of speakers. So you want to kind of be aware of that. You want to be looking at this thing on the right-hand side when you're adjusting your audio levels so that it's not jumping too high. I heard a good rule of thumb was to keep your audio levels around -6 dB. This is pretty high. All of this Monstercat music that I use is super highly produced, so it's a good idea for me to lower it quite a bit. But like that would be a pretty safe level. And if you have everything kind of leveled out around there and not jumping dramatically higher than that, then it should sound really like pretty good across all platforms. It's kind of weird when you, and I'm definitely guilty of this. I've always I like just cranking my stuff, but now I'm getting better at kind of doing my audio mix a little bit quieter and then just giving the viewer, the audience, to turn up the audio on their end, as opposed to them having, watching a video and it's nice, tranquil, good sounding audio. And then all of a sudden here comes a Global Degree video and it's like, bah, like in your face. And, it's way too harsh and loud. So you want to maybe take into consideration your audio settings, keeping it around a -6 dB. That should be a pretty safe point for you to not be peaking and to be able to have a smooth, consistent audio line. So you're going to get that by lowering your audio levels, which I went over before. But that's like, you can see here, I did a duck. Right here, I did a duck of my audio, my song, which is a pretty good indicator that there's going to be some sort of dialogue coming in after that. If I lowered the audio there, usually somebody will be coming in and talking. So
as soon as we got there, I realized that everybody was taking a pill and a Ibiza, and it's not really my scene.
And then that was the end of him talking, and so I just I brought the song back up, and you can see that raise between these two points right here. If I made that shorter, then that jump up in volume is going to happen much more dramatically. And so it might not sound smooth. A lot of editing is about kind of finessing things and smoothing them out. Like that's just really dramatic. It just goes bam, and just jumps right up. So I probably would leave it the way I had it, which was a slower, not too slow though, but a more gradual climb. And so it's not going to be jarring for the viewer to watch. You can think of it a bit like a car almost, like if you're to have passengers in your car and you're slamming on the brake, then, they're going to hate driving with you because all of a sudden you're getting slammed around all the time. You want to kind of finesse people into things. You want to smooth out the audio. You want the visuals to not be too jumpy. Maybe put some intention in the way you're cutting it. At the beginning here, I cut this part with the castle with a bunch of birds. There are these crazy birds flying around, but I used the motion of the birds and the consistency of the birds to help put a theme almost to the edit. Otherwise, maybe these clips would be a bit dull to watch. But so there's a theme of birds and consistent movements and stuff like that. And that kind of helps make your edits more seamless and appealing to watch. There's a lot of things to factor in, but yeah, does anybody have any more questions here? And I'm totally going past the 2 hours that we've allotted, but.
I have one question, but it's hard if I wrote it.
Yeah, you want to? Did you write it already, or do you want to write it?
No. It'll be hard if I write it. So sometimes people are talking and they do something like this, and then a video appears, a square, a small video appears on top of the video.
Yep.
So how do they do that?
Okay, so that's kind of what I went through before. I'll show you. Okay, let's see if I can make a good example of that.
gypsies that live in the caves here.
Okay, let's say over
We're gonna
this
go and try
clip,
to check out their
I
home.
wanted another clip to all of a sudden pop in. So I would find the clip that I want to have pop in. I'm going to use this one that's down on the timeline here. I'm just going to steal this clip from here and bring it over here. So now that, because I haven't changed the size of this clip, it's going to take up the entire frame. But if I go up into my effects controls here and I go to scale and I lower it down, now all of a sudden this clip is becoming smaller and it's layered over top of my other clip. And now I can just choose the moment that I want that shot to pop in, and I can choose exactly where I want it to be. So I'm gonna change the location of this. So I want it to pop up next to my face. So it's gonna pop up, see how now it's popping up next to my face? So that's because I've layered it over top of another layer of video. So that's gonna be, if I put this underneath this layer of video, it wouldn't pop up. It has to be on the timeline on the top layer of the video tracks. So then it's gonna come in and appear above my other clip. Now, if you've done this, what you can do also is now all of a sudden take, say, an audio, like a sound effect, and add like a bing sound effect, something like that, like bing, and then that would like have like the popping, like, and time it so that the bing happens right as this thing pops into the shot.
Out their homes, the way they live their life.
Right, and then that'll help you like put a visual over top of something else. But then that'd be something that you'd want to like premeditate in the moment. A lot of times, like when we've gone to locations and we can't pronounce the name of the spot. Like we were in this place in Bangladesh. It was called like Gorgamit Morchit something or other, like this Bagaret Gorgamit Morchit something crazy, and none of us could pronounce it properly. So I just got Mike to go, and the name of the place is going to come in right here. And we just videotaped him going like that. And then later on, I animated the letters to go and pop up in between his fingers. And I just like, but I premeditated beforehand that I was going to do that in post. So if you wanted to do that, you just record yourself going like, and this happened, or like, and it's going to, this is what it looks like. And just do that, but have enough space next to your head. And then you can just come into post and just place the video over the top of it.
And I imagine it's the same with the pictures, right? Like if I want to put an image, like I just like import the image and then.
Yeah, 100%. So here's something that I also do with preferences, graphics. So if you go to preferences, oh, maybe it's not graphics. 1 second. Oh, where is it? Sorry, 1 second, guys. What the hell? Okay, so sorry, there it is. It's under timeline. So if you go to preferences and you go to timeline, here it'll say still image default duration. Okay, I have it set up so it's 1 frame. That's the way that I've set it up, because the majority of the time that I'm bringing in like a still photograph into Adobe Premiere, I'm doing it because I created like a time lapse or a hyperlapse. I'm doing it like 90% of the time. I don't cut in just still photographs that often. Sometimes I do, but not too often. If I didn't change this, then the way it's automatically set up is for 5 seconds. So if you bring in a hyperlapse or a time lapse into your project, each single frame of that hyperlapse is going to be a 5-second clip. So that's not going to work for a time lapse or a hyperlapse. You're going to want to have them come in as a single frame. But in doing so now, if I bring in a photograph, it's going to come in as a single frame, and then I'm going to have to go in there and just drag it out. You can go and click on that clip and just drag it out on the timeline, and it'll extend itself to be however long you want it to be. So that should be pretty easy. If you just import, you can import JPEGs, no problem. You can import like Photoshop files. If you open up a Photoshop file and bring it in, it'll actually give you the option to select individual layers from your clip, in which case you can like manipulate the different layers from your Photoshop project, which could be pretty handy. But if you just wanted to have like, a photo pop up of your friend, then you just bring in that clip and you can place that on the layer of video above your other video, and then just scale it down, move it to where you want, and then just move it timeline on the timeline to where you want it to pop in. Maybe time it to music or put a little sound effect behind it.
Okay, thanks. And I have one last question.
Yeah.
With music, like, if let's say I want to use like a song, like a Kygo song, like, can I just use the song, or do I have to like buy the rights to use the song?
Okay, it depends on what you're looking to do with it. So, I mean, I've never ever like I think I've reached out to a couple artists, but nobody's ever gotten back to me. But before this project, I was always just choosing my own music. And for the most part, the way that I was getting paid was by like contract work. It wasn't necessarily as being like televised. So like I wasn't like, I'm not like heavily ripping off the artist. I was using their song, but if I was to be trying to monetize or try to make money with this video on YouTube, then I wouldn't be able to do that unless I had gotten permission from the artist. And then they do what's called whitelisting. So Monstercat as a company has whitelisted their entire catalog of music and put our name under this whitelisting. So any video that I upload to our channel, because they have these like these computer programs that'll read the wavelengths of each of the songs. So it'll indicate right away if it's a copy protected song and whether or not you have the rights to use that song. So if you don't have the rights to use that song, then I think that the artist, the musician, they're the one that ends up getting paid for having the original content. So if your video gets 2 million views and you've monetized, I don't think you can monetize on it because you don't have the rights to the song. Then I was told that the artist actually gets payment, but that could also be false. Maybe it's just YouTube ripping off the artist also.
Like with Monstercat, is there a way like, can we like pay like monthly to get the rights to use the songs? Like,
I think the thing with Monstercat, like they're looking to work with content producers. They're definitely keen to work with content producers. If you're producing some amazing stuff and they identify with your project, then they would be inclined to give you the rights to use their music as well. But I think that they would really want to be backing a project that they feel represents their brand properly. They're really like a big fan of the stuff that we're producing, so they're stoked on us using all their music because they feel like it's representing the artists properly. It's representing them as a brand properly. You know, we're promoting travel and adventure, and we're doing crazy shit. So they kind of like that content. But I don't know. It depends on what you're producing. Maybe they wouldn't be the right company. Maybe there's a different company that you could use. Or the other option is I mentioned earlier that I've actually signed up. I've gotten a subscription to a web page called Artlist. So you maybe write this down. Write down Artlist. It was $200. It was cheap, like $200, and then it's just peace of mind. And a lot of the stuff that I've used, like in this video, that Spanish guitar music, I got that from Artlist. There's a song after that I also got from Artlist, where there's a bunch of like really driving, awesome electronic songs. They've got rock and roll stuff. It really covers like quite a wide variety. And if you get a subscription to that, then I think you should be able to use any of that music without having to ask for the rights. And then you can monetize that music on YouTube.
and do you know if they have like commercial music as well, like music, like popular music that everybody knows about, not just like instrumental music?
I don't think that they have something that would be coming from a huge artist, but they have stuff that would sound similar to it. A lot of artists have kind of like pretty blatantly ripped off popular music and then just made it their own by switching certain elements to the song a little bit. So I don't think you'd be able to get one. I don't know if there's one where you could have Kygo. You know, I think you might have to reach out to Kygo.
Okay.
It's a bit heartbreaking, but here's the other thing though, is that like one thing that I've learned in the last 3 years is that you need to ask. Like if you don't ask for these things, it's never going to happen. So Mike asked to be sponsored to travel the world, and a couple people said yeah. They just said okay. Like he put together a good presentation, and then had an idea, but there was nothing really strongly indicating that it was going to be a successful trip or that he was more qualified than other people to do it or anything. He just had the balls to go and ask. And so we kind of do that all the time now. Like we just ask everybody for everything. And a lot of people are excited to help out. So you never know. Maybe your project resonates with Kygo. Maybe they love the idea of supporting an up and coming artist. So it doesn't hurt for you to reach out and just ask. And, in which case I would suggest almost like writing out a nice letter that is like directed towards Kygo, but maybe to some degree can be switched up a little bit, and then just save that as a template. And then you could start sending that out to lots of artists and try to get access to the music. Because I agree with you, man. The music is so important. You need it. You have it takes me hours. I mean, thankfully, Monstercat produces a lot of good stuff, but all of this stuff that I'm using, I had never heard of the artist before. I'd never listened to their music, and then I'm just going through and I'm finding stuff that, you know, kind of conveys the emotion that I'm trying to get across in the video. And so I'm lucky that they actually are producing good stuff, because it could have been a terrible music sponsor, and then our product would have sucked. You know, that was actually when I started doing this, and we sat down with Monstercat and we started going over what we were going to be doing for them and what they're doing for us. Mike didn't really ask them too much about whether or not we could use their music. And then I asked him, like, so do I need to reach out to the artists? And they're like, no, don't worry about it. You can just use whatever song you want. And that's when, like, this is before we'd gone out and shot anything, but I had this massive light bulb just go on over my head, like, holy Christ, like, we have a music sponsor. Like, I don't have to ask for any of the rights. That's huge. That's so big. So, so it's out there. I don't know. I mean, I'm not entirely sure what kind of content you're producing, but, you know, maybe it would work with them. They're producing good stuff. They sponsored a couple other guys that we're friends with, and so they are definitely keen to working with other content producers.
Okay, thanks.
Anyways, can I go over slowing down the audio for a slow motion clip? Thank you guys. Gonna put it in. Have a great day. Okay, let's go. I'm gonna go over slowing down audio. Yep, so slowing down audio is gonna work the same way you just slow down video. If you right click on a clip, scroll down, and then it'll give you the speed duration option. Click on that. So right now it shows, okay, it's 100%. So this clip is playing the way that I imported it, the way that I intended it to play. If I change that to 50%, then it's going to play out for twice as long. And
Live their life.
Let's try it on this other clip. So this is going to be with the video. So if I play that out, because I have the video and the audio selected here, it's going to slow them both down. So if I had just clicked on the audio, then it would only affect the audio. But you'd need to choose either your video or your audio individually. And if most of the time I would probably slow them both down, but there are definitely instances when I would want to just slow down the audio. Sometimes it sounds cool to have somebody's voice come in a little bit lower, something like that. Or if there's a sound effect and I find that I'm using a sound effect over and over, but I don't want the sound effect to sound like the same sound effect over and over, sometimes I will speed up or slow down the sound effect, because it pretty dramatically will change the way the sound effect sounds. So let's just try this, like, go to speed, 100, let's bring that back to 100. Actually, let's go like that. Okay. These buttons over here also, like, here's these little eyeballs. If you click on these eyeballs here, it's gonna make it so that you can't see that layer of video. So right here, if I click on this eyeball, now I'm gonna be able to see it. If I click on it again, it gets rid of it. So this is gonna just single out my audio. So we're only focusing on the audio here.
Now, the gypsies that live in the caves here, and we're gonna go and try to check out their homes and the way they live their life.
Okay, so, I mean, it's not too loud. I don't know if you guys can hear that properly, but if I slow that down, 50%, so now that's going to drag out on the timeline 50%. So because I slowed it down and I had a clip afterwards, it's actually going to end up cutting off the entirety of the clip because I didn't give it enough room. But had I had enough room at the end of the clip and I slowed that down, speed 50, you're going to see that it's going to extend. And it's extending by twice as much, right? And now if I clip on that, sounds like a monster. It's really slow. So if you wanted to slow down just the audio, that's what you would do. You'd want to, like, go and click on, select just that audio clip. But most of the time, I think you're probably going to, if you're doing slow motion, you're probably going to be doing it to the visual and the audio. Hopefully that helps. The slow motion stuff's super fun to play with. I've been doing a lot of that in the last like 2 or 3 years. Oh, somebody's jumping in here. David, you want to talk? What's going on there, bro?
Yesterday you talked about there was a clip where the subjects were moving and they had a tag that was following them.
Yep.
Whether it was their name or whatever it was.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So, okay. So that's something that you do. Here, yeah, I've got an example of that as well. Yeah, this project's good because I've got pretty much all of that kind of stuff, all the components that I use. Okay. So at the beginning of all of our videos this year, we've thrown in a title card for the country. So this will be an example of ours from this country. Oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
Right, like that?
Yeah.
So it looks like the letters are actually part of the image, but it's something that I didn't post. So what I did is I chose the shot that I wanted to put the text in,
Mm-hmm.
and then if I right click it, I'm just gonna click on Edit Original, but it's gonna open up After Effects here. If you click on some of these clips, if you select a bunch of them, and then right click, and then say replace with After Effects composition, it's going to immediately jump into After Effects. And it makes it really seamless for you to be able to jump in, create a creative, dynamic looking title effect in After Effects, and then go back to your original clip. So I did that in After Effects. One second. The way that you do it is by doing something called motion tracking. It's really easy with a shot like these drone shots because, one second. These drone shots are easy to do it with because the gimbal and the flight path is really consistent and smooth. So if you have a ton of movement in your shot, it's kind of hard to do. But what you're gonna do is, I'm not gonna teach you how to do this all right now, but I'm just gonna give you a quick breakdown because it is kind of a time-consuming thing to do. But what I would do is I would find a part of this image here that has a very sharp contrast and is kind of close to where I want the letters to be. And then I would use something called motion tracking. I would choose a couple different parts of the visual, and then it like animates it out. It goes frame by frame, and it'll try with, like, given what you put inside of this little box, it'll try to like follow that part of the video the whole time. So it's like recording an animation that's happening in your visual, because it's recording the motion of the drone panning up. It's recording the motion of the drone moving forward. It's recording the size of these trees getting closer to me. It starts, but you have to like find the right point of the image to choose. And then once you've done that and you've actually like created a smooth animation, then you apply that animation to another thing, like say text or something like that. It could be anything. You can apply it to a photograph or something, but that animation will then apply to your letters, and they'll follow the movement of the clip. Mm-hmm. It's something that we can go over when we do the After Effects class next weekend.
Okay.
It's a super cool effect. That's something that definitely, like, if I'm introducing somebody, it's cool to have, that pop up over their head, or if they're walking down the street and maybe like because they're walking, they've got a bit of like a bump in, like a bumpiness to how they're walking, but the camera is perfectly still. Then you could animate it to their head, and the letters will like bump up and down with them, which makes it look like it's attached to their head. So yeah, it's a really cool effect.
That's what I was.
Yeah.
Following them. Yeah.
I've done that. I did a shot we did a video for Australia, and I had a shot of Mike bungee jumping naked, but it was like a full frontal shot. And so I like motion tracked his
penis.
Motion tracked his penis.
Yeah.
So when he fell backwards, I put like the global degree globe to cover his penis, but I motion tracked his penis. Yeah. But yeah, and it's really easy. Like that's one
technology.
once again, YouTube, like that kind of effect in YouTube, there's going to be like 50 tutorials. That's a really easy one that people use all the time, and it's super effective to take your video to the next level. Yeah. Back to slow-mo. What's the difference between adding slow-mo to the clip or time remapping it? Okay, time remapping. So the thing with time remapping, that's actually, I did that on this first clip. It was like more of a ramp. So if you watch it, you can see the motion, like it's pretty slow. And then it speeds right up to this building. And that was using time remapping. So I actually created like an arcing ramp up of the speed. I knew that I wanted my clip speed to end up at like 500%, but I didn't want it to just jump from the beginning at 500%. I didn't want it to go like, I liked that smooth, slow pan up to kind of establish the setting. But then if I had left this clip the actual length that we filmed it, I think it's maybe like a 2-minute clip. So I sped it up dramatically to have it just fly across that valley right over to that castle. So if I had just applied a speed effect of 500%, it would just be like a quick pan up and blast over as opposed to that smooth ramping. And that's where I'd use time remapping. To do that, that's where, okay, so that's where you'd want to have a larger a larger video clip, because it's going to give you this bar here. If you right click on it, you can go down, show clip keyframes. Okay, time remapping, speed. So now you see on this clip, it's separated it. So there's the blue and the gray here. This line in the middle is going to be my indicator of how fast I want this clip to go. If I lower it down, it starts giving me a percentage. It says 35%. If I raise it up, it's going to go up to 248. I can crank it right up to all the way to 1,000. So it's really helpful if you want to achieve that effect of not having it just jump dramatically into a fast motion. So up here in my effects control, it's going to open, because I clicked on the time remapping, it's going to open up that up as now an editable effect. And this will happen with almost all effects that you apply to your video. It's going to pop up in this next window as an editable effect. It'll give you options for editing whatever effect you apply to your video. So this instance, we're using time remapping. So if I wanted it to start at the beginning of the clip at regular motion, I would just put it at 100%, click on this. It's going to say toggle animation. That's going to create a keyframe. So, oh, there we go. So toggle animation. So, 1 second. Boom. Okay, so now I have a keyframe here. 1 second. Sorry, guys. Maybe this will be a better one to do with. What did I do? No, 1 second. Sorry, I'm going to start this again. Why is it doing that? Okay, let's try this. Let's start this again. Okay, so if I go to the beginning of the clip and I click on this, it's going to create a keyframe. And that keyframe is going to be for 100% here. I don't think it's popping up because I think I have my Windows a little bit. Okay, so here we are. So if I create a keyframe, so that's at 100%. Now if I move further along and I create another keyframe, now in between these two keyframes, I can choose to speed it up. So now I'm going to speed that up to Oh, sorry. No, okay, sorry, let's start at the beginning here. At the beginning one, this beginning keyframe, let's speed that one up. And what happens, you can't really see it here, but it gives you two options on the keyframe. You have like a beginning option and an ending option. So now I've sped this up, but if I grab this, so now you can see them separated. Here's the beginning option and here's the ending option. So now the beginning option is going to be at 100 and I want it to ramp up to 500. So I grab this bar on the video clip down here and I bring it up till it says 500. Like that. It's going to shorten my clip again because I sped it up pretty dramatically. But right here in between these 2 points of this keyframe, that is going to be the ramp up. So the beginning we're going to be at 100 and at the end we're going to be at 500. So maybe what I wanted was for it to ramp up until this point right here and not so dramatically at the beginning. So I would drag this all the way to the end here, which will end up in turn like lengthening the clip a little bit down here. But what it's done, and you can see the gradual climb in this line on your visual, on the video right here. And that is an indicator that during this motion or that period of time on the timeline, there is a ramp up in your speed. So then if you play it back on the clip, it's gonna, I mean, it happened pretty quickly, but there's it all of a sudden starts speeding up quite a lot. Let's move that out a little bit more so now you can see it actually a bit better. So the motion is going to start kind of slower and then speed up a lot. It's going really jerkily. Sorry, guys. It's because it's a 4K clip, so my computer's having a bit of a hard time. But that would be the difference of doing like just this typical slow motion or doing a time remapping, because with the time remapping, you can actually control the ramp up of the slow motion and the ramp down or whatever. When I'm jumping from fast motion to slow motion, a lot of times I won't use a ramp up or a ramp down, even though it might smooth it out a little bit. It's not entirely necessary. It still looks pretty good if you just jump like dramatically from the fast motion to the slow motion. Like all of this stuff in the skateboard section. Pretty much whenever they catch the trick, like you all slow down, speed it up. Slow down, slow down, speed it up. So just slowing down just like that one little section. Slow down, speed it up. Right? And I'm just using a harsh cut. I'm just cutting the visual of when I want the slow motion to start and to stop. I'm slowing it down and then I'm putting like a hard cut of faster motion video right after it. And as long as the frames are exactly synced, like you don't have a jump in any frame, it's going to be a smooth transition from fast to slow motion. And that's a super cool effect to apply to your videos. It's really fun to do to music also. I do it a lot if there's like a high kicking drum, like or a snare, like a snare. I'll just and like just speed up the visual really quickly and then slow it right back down. And it's a cool style to give to your video. I think I'm like almost an hour past. It's a lot to teach though, I know. Does anybody else have any other questions? How many of you are still left here? Do I have you all? Yeah. Yeah, I'd say just get I'm pretty sure that Adobe offers a free trial version of Premiere, of like their entire creative series, and start practicing with that, and if maybe video editing is not your thing, maybe you're going to be leaning more towards being a cinematographer or a photographer or something like that, and that's totally fine. I get it. I work with other editors, and it's really hard to find somebody that's a good editor, so there's a lot of work out there for sure, and if you really wrap your mind around everything that's going on, and it's not that difficult, it just takes a bit of time practicing, then it's super creative, and the final product is really, really rewarding. I mean, at this point, for the rest of my life, I'm going to have these like really highly polished, beautiful videos that, when I'm 70, I can show my grandchildren and be like, I was kind of cool back in the day. It's kind of fun to have that. But So it's, it's, you kind of giving yourself a practice or giving yourself a present. I mean, hey, no worries, Mariana. No worries. You're welcome. Thanks for joining me and listening to me ramble on about editing. I know it's a lot to take in for sure. Once again, I'm going to say, guys, if you want any more information on any of this stuff, I'm an open book and I'm happy to help out in any way I can. If you watch one of our videos and you see an effect that you like, I'd be happy to explain how we achieve that effect. But a lot of it's going to become very apparent to you once you start using the software. You're going to start watching movies differently. You're going to start watching videos differently. Whenever I see a video and there's a cool element to it, I'm usually immediately trying to figure out either how they did it or I know exactly how they did it already, and because I'd figured it out before. But there's a ton of cool stuff you can do to enhance your video projects. Cool. Everybody's cool? Yeah? Yeah. Aaron, what's going on there, buddy?
Not much. Sorry if I fell asleep a little bit.
Dude, I'm gonna do one-on-ones with you.
I don't know. Whenever you get some time.
Yeah.
What do you think of that hyperlapse video I put up?
Yes. Okay, so you were wondering why all of a sudden there's like a dark frame that's popping in?
Yeah, just that middle one. Like, obviously, I was trying to adjust a setting, but like, is there a way to smooth it out?
Yeah. Did you do something in the moment? Like, did you adjust your settings in the moment?
I think so. Yes.
Okay.
that.
That's definitely the issue. It's a pretty long hyperlapse though. Like you could use maybe a different portion of it, or maybe go in and try to adjust that one clip or something individually to smooth that out. But it happens pretty quickly. It still looks pretty good. Did you do that with a tripod?
No, that was just the same as Monaco, just handheld.
Yeah, handheld? Yeah. The Monaco hyperlapse. Yeah.
I think each of them's taken me about 40 minutes to do.
Like
to take it for a while. Yeah.
I don't think the Monaco one, Aaron actually joined us on our last trip. He met up with us in Albania, and he was with us in Monaco and France. And so he was there when I was shooting a hyperlapse in Monaco. I'm sure he was looking at me like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Because it's really fun.
You disappeared, and like we're all looking around going, where the fuck's Alex gone? And then next minute we're like, I think Mike saw you. He's like, oh, he's doing some photography thing.
Here's Monaco. This is what I filmed. This is how it turned out. Just hundreds of photographs. It's not bad. It's all right. It was tough. There's so many people. There's like crowds of people, right?
How did you not get caught? That was like 5 minutes after we got told off.
I don't know. I'm a sneaky little devil. There we go.
Yeah, I think that'll be one thing. I'm definitely doing some shorter hyperlapses. Shorter
hyperlapses?
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on what you're shooting for. I mean, I usually just found I only really had time. Like I was having to get people to wait for 20 minutes while I shot them, right? So it's a lot to ask for people, especially for like a 5-second clip. But they really make the video so much better though. Like all those ones in Barcelona that I used in that last video, this is inside the Sagrada Familia. They just look great. There's a bit of a jerkiness to it, but it's like I love them. So much to look at. It's so much more dynamic than just a regular video. Right?
Yeah, that's something like I'm probably going to work on more than the videos side of things.
Yep.
I really want to get one in the city, but I haven't had time yet.
They're good to mix into your videos. Did any of you guys watch that video that I mentioned, the Watchtower of Turkey?
Yeah, I watched it this morning actually.
Yeah, so he put hyperlapses in that video quite often.
Yeah.
Placed really smoothly in there. That guy put a lot of work into that video. That's an amazing video.
There's some really cool ones out there, but man, they take some time.
For sure, yeah. That's why, like, man, as a videographer, when I see a video with the good hyperlapses in it, I'm like, good job, good work. I saw the Sam Colder video recently, and he had one from the Eiffel Tower, and it just ramps right out and looks great.
I do have a question, Alex. So even on that Monaco one,
yeah,
you were walking on the sidewalk right there in front of the fence.
I'm hugging that railing pretty much.
Yeah, you're hugging that railing, and you obviously have the entrance is the focal point of the whole entire thing. When I tried mine this week, one of my things I didn't know was like, do you need to? Obviously, this answered my question for me, but I didn't know if you needed to have just a straight line going towards whatever you're going to, or can you move laterally? And
yeah, you can move. I mean, Aaron did one down in, was that Mexico? He did the one.
Chinitza.
Yeah,
that was done in a circle.
Yeah, he went like he rotated like a circle around it, and so you can definitely throw some motion in there if it's done well. Like it helps. This one, I have motion in this one.
Yeah.
Right, just rotate right around it. But as long as you just kind of have to have a visual reference point of something to keep consistently in your viewfinder, and use your crosshatches. Just be as diligent as you possibly can be. When I come out of doing these things, because I have my camera like up against my eye, I always have like this
you're gonna
thing like on my eyebrow, like I'm pressing the viewfinder up against myself. But
it can be pretty tricky. Like I've done a few now, as Alex has said. Afterwards, it's a bit of a workout. Like the one I did in Mexico was in I think it was about 40 degrees. I was sweating.
Here's one that like I did this one horizontally, and I'm not entirely sure why it didn't work out, but I mean, it's just like this one's terrible. It's a shame because it's a beautiful day. You've got the fountain. I'm sure if I went in there and worked on it, I could probably smooth it out. I just haven't done the work yet because it's probably going to be a lot. But yeah, that doesn't work at all. That looks terrible. I did them all over the place.
Is there anything apart from warp stabilizer that you would use to stabilize it?
No problem, Regina. See you, Charlie. I haven't tried anything else. I've just been using warp stabilizer. I could look up tutorials and find out if there's something else. But I think the most important thing that you do in the moment is you keep something as locked down and consistent. Like this is the Vatican. These ones are easy because it was just a straight line and I had kind of an open road to work with. And I just put it on the top of the Vatican. But I think this one was like 300 or 400 shots. People are always looking at you like you're a total idiot. Like, what's this guy doing? You're like,
would you say a general rule of thumb is getting as many shots as you can, or?
I think just consistency with your steps. Like I just do not a huge step forward, just a kind of a normal step forward.
I thought about is having some sort of either a band or something where it's like literally like I can't step any further than that rope or that band would actually allow me.
Yeah, that could maybe work.
No.
No?
I don't know.
I'll just make sure that it would be exactly the same every time.
You might be getting a bit too neurotic. I think you can probably keep your steps, just try to keep it as consistent. If it's off by a couple inches, it's not going to be a big deal. I think the most important thing is that you just find a good end frame and something that's not going to be like obstructed at any point in the motion, and just keep it locked in. Here's one where the warp stabilizer went all crazy. Right? Like it still looks kind of cool, but I don't know, it's like going in and out.
Just to go back to Dave's thing, the like band or something, you'd really it'd be quite hard on your body. Like if you're constantly trying to use something to stop you moving.
Yeah.
If you get what I mean.
Probably not necessary.
Okay.
A lot of people do it with tripods.
Mm.
They bring a tripod and move it, and so then it's going to be always at the same level. If you do it that way, then you're probably going to just absolutely nail it, but you're going to also add maybe 10 to 15 minutes of time to filming the thing, which, I mean, we're the way we're going is like run and gun. I'm like, okay, guys, give me like 15 minutes. I need to shoot a hyperlapse, and I make the team stop entirely. But if I was to be shooting it on my own, I might take more time to go and shoot them. Take a little bit more time to do it so you get it really perfectly. This one I shot on my own. I woke up first thing in the morning and went to the Parthenon. It was kind of hard to frame. I just used the final corner of the Parthenon as my consistent point. But then when I got to it and I rotated around it, you can see like it looks pretty cool here, but then all of a sudden my final frame is really weird. It just drops out of frame. And so I probably wouldn't use any of that end part. But It's the Parthenon. It's kind of cool. Yeah. Okay. I think I gotta get going, guys. Hopefully. But,
Thanks for the extra time.
I did. Yeah, don't worry about it, man. I want to be able to cover all the material that we need. And I haven't done these yet, so I don't know how much time I need for each one of these, and I'm happy to go over. Yesterday I think we went half an hour over. At one point I looked, I'm like, wow, I'm really sailing through the material that I've organized, and I thought I was going to end with like an hour still remaining, and I've covered everything, but it actually ended up working out pretty well. So it was kind of a bit of a learning curve for me. I also yesterday stupidly, I guess, pushed the record button and stopped it from recording, so I didn't record it. And so tomorrow I'm doing yesterday's class again. If any of you guys want to jump in, I'll blast out an email again, but I'm going to do photography again tomorrow if you guys want to be a part of it. Or if any of you missed
Quick
it.
question.
Yeah.
The 2 box lines, how and what's the, like...
These?
Yeah, don't mind the naivety, but like what's the point of having those in there?
Okay, so like these lines right here, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Those are the safe margin points. So in the middle here, there's an indicator as to what is directly central. You can see it doesn't cross over, but if this little indicator here went directly down and this one went directly across, then that middle point would be the very center of the shot. But on top of that, so I mean, that could be a good reference point if you're placing stuff into your shot. But for the most part, I think it's for helping you put down like subtitles and titles and that kind of thing. Because this would be, like this full frame is what you would watch if you went full screen on your computer as a YouTube video. But if I was to play this video off of maybe like a DVD or something on a TV, then it's not, this is out of the safe zone. It's not a promise that this portion of the shot would actually be in that, on the TV. So it's an indicator for where you want to put your titling. Because if you have titles coming out over top of that, then it might be cropped out on a TV. I use it as a reference point for when I'm doing like lower thirds, when I have like the bottom and it goes like, and it pops up and says, you know, this hostel costs $14. I put it in the top bottom left here, and I use that as a good indicator just to have it consistently come up in the same place. But yeah, that's
Okay, cool.
what it's used for.
Yeah, just throw I was at what.
You can turn it on and off. Safe margins right there. Click it off. Safe margins. Turn it on. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Hazel, you're good? Oh, you're unmuted. You're in.
Hi, yeah, I'm good. I missed the beginning, so I'm going to go back and watch that, but I managed to get my head around it after
Okay.
the season.
Have you done any video editing before?
Yeah, only recently. I started using Photoshop just because I've used to working with that for images, and I think that's helped because I was a bit worried about Premiere Pro because there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
I think that has just helped me then start visualizing the timeline. So now looking at Premiere Pro, it doesn't feel so scary.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's just once you wrap your mind around how the timeline works, then you start seeing how you would play, like layer a video. Can I close that one? Let's see. Just gonna close that one. Oh, sorry. That's why. Yeah, I mean, the timeline gets crazy. If you look at it, to the untrained eye, you're just looking at boxes lying on top of each other, right? And
yeah, I think if I hadn't done anything before video, I would have been like,
Yeah, but I think any editor, if you look at their timeline, they're going to look slightly different. It's just the way that they organize themselves. So it's good for you to just kind of find out your workflow. There's certain, and it's just keeping yourself as organized as possible is important. But yeah, it's just layering. Like the layer above is going to be the one that's visual, and everything is indicated by time and by frame. And once you know that, then it's pretty easy. It really is actually pretty easy. It just seems a bit like daunting when you first wrap your mind around it.
Yeah, I think it does help, like having used other Adobe programs, similar kind of icons.
Cool. Yeah, so I'll get that video or the video of this entire class posted up, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Perfect.
Otherwise, I'll see you guys next weekend.
Yeah, see ya.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.